Welcome to the September Zoning Board. We have tonight 11 cases that we're going to hear. We're going to hear,
Hang on, we're 5 minutes early.
No, we're not.
no, we don't.
No?
That clock is,
Sometimes, right, that
Okay.
clock's wrong.
We're good. Well, by the time I finish the dialogue, we'll be all set. We're going to hear two types of cases tonight. We're going to hear variances and we're going to hear special exceptions. We'll take each case individually. Normally, I would call the case individually, and I'll ask that the applicant come forward and be sworn in, and we will ask you to confine your comments to 15 minutes. I will then look for anyone in support of the variance or special exception request and ask you to limit your testimony to 5 minutes. I will then seek any testimony for people who are opposed to the request. I'll seek then comments from the code administration, and I'll give a chance for the applicant to provide any new information or rebuttals from what they heard. All right, the first case tonight is a request for a rehearing, case 3422. It's 72 Washington Street, CN Neighborhood Commercial District, 45 Center Street. And we've all gotten documents from the request for the rehearing. We originally had a 15-page document that's now replaced by the 25-page documents. Has everyone received the document?
Yes.
I had recused myself on this case, so I'm going to abstain.
Okay.
I'll just stay up here.
And it also should be noted that Mr. Evans is also recusing himself. So this rehearing request is being heard by a 3-member board. So we're asked if we made any errors or if we see any new or additional information that we didn't consider the first time around.
I do not.
I agree. I mean, it was the document repeated a lot of what took place at the hearing with some colorful observations, but I don't believe there was any new information or pointed to any errors that would cause us to have a rehearing.
And the chair concurs. So do we want to entertain a motion?
I move that we deny the motion for rehearing.
And I'll second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
The request for rehearing is denied. Okay, the second request for a rehearing is case 44-22, 179 Pembroke Road, off Office Park Performance District by Jeremy Eggleston Esquire for Proverbs 16:3 LLC owner. We received a written request for this. Has everyone read that?
Yes.
Yes. Ted, any comments? Any observations?
Not immediately, I'm looking for the paperwork, sorry.
It would be a letter from Orrin Reno.
So I reviewed the letter. I didn't see anything in there that pointed to errors we made or new information. The fact that other hotels in the city might have kitchens is an interesting fact, but I think that's an enforcement issue, not a zoning board issue.
I think, I can't remember how I voted, but I do remember it was a tough decision for me, so that might somewhat inform my opinion on the rehearing, but I think that was an important fact, and because it was an appeal of an enforcement action, I think that fact is important because it is an enforcement action, and I think when the proposed use doesn't really fit neatly into either category, I do think how other uses have been labeled in the city are important, especially because we did put a lot of weight on the fact that they had a full kitchen. So I'd be inclined to grant a rehearing.
So I was not here for the hearing, so I'm relying on the letter in the minutes, so I think I'll defer any immediate comment on it and see where the rest of it goes.
Likewise.
Yeah, you know, I looked at the minutes and I didn't see any reference to the Marriott residence, and I think that's certainly an important piece that we didn't hear. And I would be inclined to rehear this also.
So the question. So neither Mr. Monahan nor Mr. Evans were there, right, for that meeting, so, are you guys comfortable voting? Because if, on the rehearing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable, I don't think it disadvantages anybody
Yeah,
for me
okay.
to rehear it.
Yeah,
I just didn't want to burden the members who were here, so.
yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure we were gonna have 5, because obviously we might not all, yeah, okay.
Guess it's motion time.
Oh. Well, I just had a question, so. But I'd move to approve the rehearing.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of rehearing this case, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Vote is 4-1 to rehear the case.
So procedurally, does it go on for next month? Okay.
All right, our next case tonight is case 4122, 188 Pleasant Street, Neighborhood Commercial District by Nuria Energy Corp. for Arctage Realty LLC. Applicant wishes to engage in the operation of a convenience store with a retail sale of gasoline and seeks a reversal of the code administrator's decision per correspondence dated June 13th, 2022, which determined that the structure and land has been abandoned under section 2886B1. So I guess if the board upholds the decision, then we'll have a request for a variance.
And just before we start, I'd like to disclose that Attorney Pollack and I have a case that's been going on for 7 years now. So we've become quite well acquainted, but I don't think that's going to impede my ability to act fairly tonight.
Gentlemen, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
As you testify, please state your name and where you reside.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Ari Pollack. I'm an attorney at the Gallagher, Callahan, and Gartrell firm here in Concord, and I'm present tonight for Noria Energy Corporation. With me to my left is Tom Healy, Vice President of Facilities Development and Maintenance at Noria, and to my right is Steve Pedro with HFA Architects.
I'm sorry, last name, Steve?
Pedro, P-E-D-R-O.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you. Noria is leasing 188 Pleasant Street from the landowner Arctage Realty, and there is a letter of authorization that came in with our applications to authorize us to appear before you for the requested relief. We're here tonight with actually 2 opposing requests. First, we're asking for a review of a staff decision that the structure and the land of this former gasoline station has been abandoned. We'd like the board to review that decision and frankly find that the land and the structure has not been abandoned, that the use needs to be re-permitted through the planning board, but not the structures and the setbacks and so forth, and we'll get into the details. The second, and again, somewhat opposite application, is if the board confirms the staff view of abandonment, then we're here asking for variances that would allow the existing structural nonconformities to remain and allow the land and the structure to be refurbished as they're currently configured. And so if it pleases the board, we would present both applications, put all the options on the table, and then answer any questions. And to be clear, even in the event that either abandonment is reversed or the variances are granted, the use of service station convenience store would still require a conditional use permit for the CN or neighborhood commercial district and a site plan review at the planning board. So this is not the last stop in the train by any means. Let me give you some background information. The property is located at 188 Pleasant Street, but it's probably more identifiable as being directly across the street from Concord High. The lot consists of 10,570 square feet, whereas the minimum conforming lot size in that district is 10,000 square feet. So small lot, but it is conforming. According to the tax card, the parcel was improved in 1981, and thereafter it's operated as a gasoline station. The land and the improvements are assessed at about $450,000, and the building portion of that's about $250,000, which equates to an annual tax bill of about $11,000. The peninsula forming intersection, the roads that converge create something of a peninsula-shaped lot. It makes for a smallish site, and it makes that smallish site even tighter. And so as a consequence, the current layout of the building, the gas canopy, the gasoline-related improvements, the air pump and so forth, they're all non-conforming in terms of their location and setbacks from two roadways, two pieces of frontage, lot coverage, fuel island, driveway widths, driveway separation. And Nori is just the latest in a series of leasing and operating tenants for this location. We have to concede that the gas station and convenience store stopped operating in early 2020, and therefore 12 months have elapsed since the operation stopped. So the use is abandoned, but our focus tonight is squarely on the structure, the building, the canopy, the driveway widths, the improvements, and the condition of the land and those existing improvements. The structure, the canopy, the overall site layout, they all look and feel like a gas station that's waiting for its next operator. And importantly for the ordinance language, and we'll get into this as well, the site has, quote, characteristic equipment or furnishings used in the performance of the use, end quote. The site's readily available for repurposing and refacing as a gasoline and convenience store, and that's exactly what Noria is intending for the site. I'd like to draw your attention to some photographs that were part of the appeal. I don't know if they're in your packet. I believe they are.
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you. I took them all, so you can blame me for the poor photography, but I took them all on the morning of June 28th of 2022. And if we could just scroll through to the first photo, and these are all representative of the existing condition. If you've been by there any time in the last month or two, you saw the same thing I photographed. But right, so photograph number one, it shows a pole sign with prior operators branding and a changeable price board, which is typical of a gas and convenience operator. And it also shows the tire air dispenser, again, a typical piece of equipment. The second photograph shows the gas island canopy. Sorry for the landscape orientation there. And the convenience store facade. Again, it's got the prior operator's branding, but these improvements they're readily available for repurposing and reoccupation in the same manner that they were previously used. The second photo here also shows the recent addition of construction fencing this year to secure the site for some plumbing work that was done under the gas island. This is work being done by Noria to prepare the site for its use, and frankly, the work was interrupted when we learned that permitting and authorizations to proceed were an issue. You haven't seen much activity out there of late because we're waiting for these applications to shake out and hopefully for conditional use and site plan to be granted. The third photo, if we can go down one more, which now of course is the wrong direction, sorry. This one shows a close-up view of the gas island, the subsurface work that's going on, and that's a contractor's truck in the background. They were working the day I was there, but the site has since been secured and the fencing remains. In terms of the merits of the administrative appeal, it all hinges on the language of section 28.86B of the ordinance. And that section is cited for you in the narrative portion of the application. And in particular, B1, the operative language for evidence of abandonment is the following. Excuse me. In the case of a structure or of a structure and land in combination, the visible or otherwise apparent discontinuance of the use of a building, other structure, or premises, and here's the piece I'd ask you to focus on, resulting from an owner's overt act or failure to act, including but not limited to the removal of characteristic equipment or furnishings used in the performance of the use without its replacement by similar equipment or furnishings within a period of 12 months. Now, staff's decision, which is reproduced in your application materials, it was an email from me, responded by staff, an email back. The whole email's in there. Staff found, quote, there was a visible and apparent discontinuance of the use of the site for over 12 months, regardless of whether equipment was removed, end quote. So, you know, right there, it's an acknowledgement that the equipment was not removed. The gas island, the pump came out for the plumbing work, but the gas island, the canopy, the building, it's all still there. And honestly, I think it's our position that this finding mixes the standards of B1 and B2 from the ordinance. B2 addresses abandonment of, quote, use of land. And under B2, we have to concede that the station did close for 12+ months, the use was abandoned, and if the appeal, or frankly the variances are successful, the use needs to be approved by conditional use permit and the site plan. Again, we're not done tonight regardless of outcome. B1, however, talks about abandonment of structure and land. And this is the subsection that refers to equipment or furnishings used in the performance of the use and whether they're removed and then replaced within 12 months. There is no clock here. They were never removed. They were there when it stopped operating. They were there 3 months ago. They're there today. And so in our case, the convenience store, the fueling island, the canopy, they're all present and typical of a gas station use. Anyone driving past or walking past this site, all the students of Concord High, if you pointed to the site and you asked them, hey, what's that site used for? Everyone would recognize it as a gasoline station that does not have a present operator. It looks and feels like a gas station. So that whether it's the telltale accoutrements of the canopy, the branding sign of the prior operator, the pricing signs, the pump island, protective barriers, you know, even the tire air filling machine, they're all there intact and in position. And, you know, Noria respectfully asks that the board recognize this distinction between B1 and B2, and that it reverse the administrator's decision on abandonment of the structure and the land under B1, staying away from B2. We're asking that the ZBA find that the physical nonconformities of the site may continue, even if the use itself was abandoned and needs to be re-upped or reapproved. And I just want to be absolutely clear that if the appeal was successful and the decision on abandonment was reversed, we wouldn't need variances, but we would need to go forward for conditional use and site plan. If you don't mind, I would continue with the variance application at this time, but I can stop now if there are specific questions relating to abandonment, and there are.
I have a question. I think you were just touching on this, but I just want to make your position clear. If the use was abandoned, if we find that the use was abandoned, is it your position that a use abandonment only invalidates a use variance, but does not invalidate the non-use variances, such as the setback and the parking?
I think you're drawing a distinction between use and area variances. And we're not seeking a use variance at all.
Right.
And that distinction really doesn't exist at law anymore anyway. But we are saying that the use may have been abandoned, but a portion of the building in the setback was not abandoned. A portion of the canopy in the setback was not abandoned. The fewer spaces than is required around the fueling pump area was not abandoned, because all of the equipment and appearance of a gas station remained, and those nonconformities in terms of structure and land, not use, structure and land, according to the terms of the ordinance, should be looked at differently than whether or not the use stopped under B2 and be recognized as conforming. We still have to get a conditional use permit. We still have to talk about traffic and lighting and impacts to surrounding properties and other factors that may require mitigation. And I don't know whether we have the ability to mitigate those things or not. But in terms of the corner of the building, for example, being, again, this is more variance application than appeal, but in terms of the corner of the building being 17 feet from the property line instead of 20 feet, that would be a nonconformity that we would ask to be found pre-existing, legal, and able to continue.
Well, the only way to change that would be to move the, I mean, obviously you can't change a setback once the building is there, and I mean, you can't abandon a setback unless you move the building.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Right. So we're hopeful that the board will agree that the structure, the building, the canopy, the driveway widths, that those nonconformities are existing, they weren't abandoned, they can continue. But the use of the, as a gas station, that needs to be reapproved through conditional use. Happy to proceed or take other questions,
Appeal
Mr.
before we do
Chairman.
the variances? Do you want to talk about the appeal before we do the variances?
think so, yeah.
Because we may not need to do the variances,
I
or at
agree.
least all of them.
I think we'll pause right now.
Thank you.
Comment.
Sure. So I don't think 2886 applies at all, because that's called abandonment of a nonconforming use, and we've all acknowledged the nonconforming use has abandoned. I think that the structures, the setbacks, the lot coverage, I think that has not been abandoned. I think that remains in place based on the language of 2885, nonconforming structures, which talks about continuance of nonconforming structures as long as they're not enlarged or altered. And I agree with Andrew, I think the only way to abandon a nonconforming structure is for it to be destroyed and then not rebuilt. So I'm with you on that. Parking and loading, though, I think goes back to the nonconforming use, because 2884 talks about continuation of nonconforming use or nonconforming characteristics of a use, and specifically speaks to parking and loading. So for me, those two are easy. Where I get stuck is on the driveways, because they're neither a structure nor a use. And so I have to think about those some more. But I think you don't need variances for the setbacks or the lot coverage. I think you do need a variance for the parking and loading, and I need to think about the other two.
Yeah, I had a similar thought, but I didn't quite have the confidence to say that, because I wasn't sure, but it does seem on the plain language of it is abandonment of a non-conforming use only applies to a use.
Right.
So I agree with what Laura just said.
Do you have any thoughts on the driveways?
Well, I mean,
And this wasn't built with any variances, right? This is a pure nonconforming use?
I believe it was constructed before variances were required for these items of nonconformity. Again, you know, this is sort of fast forwarding to some of the variance discussion, but the driveways are improvements that were necessitated by the shape of the lot. And that we did include a truck turning, Steve's got it here. We did include a truck turning diagram at the last page of the variance application, Exhibit E. Just, because it's relevant to both applications, I'll mention it now, but just physically, the driveways are required to be that width to get a truck in and out of there. And so whether you're talking about a gas station, or a retail store, or a professional office, or any use that's allowed in this largely commercial district, it's going to require some variance from otherwise very confining driveway widths because of the peninsula shape of the property.
Sure.
There's just only so many ways you can get in and out of there without wiping out something.
Right.
Oh, and I think you would get a variance. I'm just trying to decide whether you need one or not.
And understand our logic. We've just tried to put it all on the table in
Yeah.
front of you. Get us home however you need to, but we wanted to put the choices out there.
My inclination in thinking about it is that the driveway width falls more into needing a variance because it's, the driveway width is based on the need for commercial activity.
Yeah.
You know, shipments or customers coming in. So if the use is abandoned, the driveway width is also abandoned. Obviously, some people are still going through there, but it's largely vacant. There's no more commercial use right now.
Right, so all I would say about, and again, this is, get us home,
Academic.
get us home however you wish. But, and I haven't even presented the variance application, but our focus on the appeal was because of the language in the ordinance in B1 that talks about the structure and land in combination. It's a weird phrase. I frankly don't know what it means, but I think what it means is you've got to accept the existing condition as it sits there today. And again, it doesn't so much matter what use you're putting on that property. It's going to be extremely confined. And if you are able to see past abandonment of the structure, you have that much less land to work with. So, the driveways are part of the land condition that we're saying was not abandoned. I mean, I suppose you could even consider it to be, the driveways are a consequence of getting a fuel truck in and out of there. And if you're going to talk about the equipment and furnishings of the performance of the use, that was a necessary piece of that performance. You don't have gas to sell if you can't get it to the station.
So, all right, if the gas station had just been sold from the previous owner to these folks and didn't cease operation, they just had a business transaction, changed it over, you wouldn't be here at all, is that?
Actually, it's entirely about the gap in time. It has nothing to do with who the operator is.
I understand that, it's the gap of time that.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And what were the dates?
I believe we looked back and calculated that the operation ceased in early 2020. Now, let me look. 2020. And this conversation started with city staff this spring, so it's pretty much 2 years.
I don't think this matters at all, but did it stop operating in any measure because of the pandemic and public health emergency?
I would only be speculating, and I've been sworn.
Yeah,
I'm
okay,
sworn to provide truthful testimony, and I don't know the answer.
okay.
My recollection is they had stopped selling gas for about a year before they closed down the shop inside.
I, again, would be guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know my client, for example, took it on as a lease acquisition. Frankly, they thought which is why the site is unearthed, they thought it would be turnkey. They were going to make some capital improvements, do some refacing, make it look like more of their brand than the prior operator, clean up the site and open up for business, and they'd be filling our cars at this point. So this has all been a surprise and an expensive detour.
Should lower your rates.
Say again?
You should lower your rates.
I'll think about that.
Not very long from it.
What do we do?
Well, Mr. Evans hasn't spoken.
Well, I find Mr. Pollock's argument persuasive about the language, and when you look at that lot, a lot of situations, and I just don't see the value of declining the appeal.
Yeah, I agree.
A procedural question on, because right now we're still technically hearing the appeal. Do we have to hear on an appeal, or before we vote, do we have to hear from the public?
Yes.
And code? And code, of course, right? Yes, yeah.
I don't know, because I'll know, or whatever that lovely term is to me, so I don't know what input I have, but I don't have any at this point. I understand how it's being presented, and it's an interpretation. I mean, I guess if I had to question anything, you know, when the gas pumps themselves are being removed and the lines into the ground are being removed, yeah, the canopy stays. Is that enough to qualify it? That's up to you to decide. That's fine.
But we do need to hear from the public.
Okay.
Well, might I just so we don't have to shuffling, if they do want to say whatever else, do you have anything else to say about the variance, or have you pretty much said everything else?
So we don't have anything more to say about the administrative appeal.
I think we're gonna
We do
decide
have
that first.
more.
Decide, okay.
And then we'll.
But I
Okay.
didn't, Lauren, didn't you observe that maybe if deciding how we act in the first matter, we might not need to go through all of the variances?
Yeah.
I'm certainly comfortable breaking it apart,
Yeah,
whatever
let's
the
do
board prefers.
Okay.
So we should hear from the public. Right, so if you could just step down.
Yeah, sure.
Is there anyone who'd like to be heard in favor of this appeal? Please come forward.
I'm in opposition to it, Mr. Chairman.
Right.
Oh, okay. He's
Is there any,
opposition.
is there anyone who wants to be heard in favor? Seeing none, if there's anyone who wants to be heard in opposition, please step forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some
Wait a minute.
material for the
You swear to
board.
tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do, Your
Yes, and
Honor.
if you could state your name for the record, please?
Robert Every of Eastern New Hampshire. They're marked by exhibits. Exhibits. It's enough for there's 3 or 4 of them there.
What would you like us to know?
Well, thank you first of all for having me here tonight. I want to focus on the relationship between that location and Concord High School. I drove up 85 miles, I'm 77 years old. I didn't really want to come, but I felt that I should. I'm very concerned with education. I went to Boston Latin, Tufts University. From Tufts, I went into the Navy, and I was with Attack Squadron 147. Made a couple of combat deployments on the carrier's Constellation and America to Vietnam. And not very exciting, but I've worked for one company my whole life, over 50 years. We're the owner of the abutting property. And I would like to tell you the truth about the place. I'm not a suit. I'm here to tell you what really goes on. We bought the building more than 24 years ago. Number one is what it looked like when we bought it. Number two and number underneath of it is when the work was in progress, and number two is what it looks like right now. Number three is the problems that piece of property has been. It's got a long history, and as I said, I'm interested in education. It's been a problem for the high school. It's been a problem for us, for every tenant we've ever had. This is not the first time it's been abandoned, and it's been abandoned a lot longer than a year and a half. It's had a succession of owners, each one worse than the next. They promise you that they're going to fix the place up and run the place right. Let me just tell you some of the things that I've observed. Constantly picking up rubbish, drug paraphernalia, I've picked that up. I've had to cut the overgrowth between the sidewalk and the property lines because it looks so bad. I had a tenant that had a son in Concord High School that had just signed a lease for the first floor apartment. And she went into the building after she signed the lease, and she came back and she says, I can't rent this place. She says they're selling all kinds of drug paraphernalia in there, which is true, which I have seen myself. Earlier, the attorney mentioned that it said, but not limited, in that section of law that he quoted. I haven't seen the law, I haven't seen any of the other paperwork or the abandonment or anything, but it does say but not limited, which obviously opens it up to a certain amount of discretion on your part. He did also mention too, if you pointed to the site and asked any Concord High School student what would it be, he said, I could tell you what they'd say. They wouldn't say it's a gas station, they'd tell you it's a head shop. I guess over the years, I went to the Concord assessing department. It was so bad, they granted an assessment, a reduction on the assessment, which obviously is your own city talking about the condition of the property. It's a disservice, but most of all, it's a disservice to the students of Concord High School. Some of you people, I'm sure, have sons and daughters that have gone there or will go there or maybe are there now. It's a disservice to every single one of them. You can look in that number 3, and you can look at, I asked one of the tenants to keep a log, breaking up fights, all kinds of trouble in the parking lot. And this is in our parking lot, right behind the building. Now, they deal drugs right behind it. Now, there isn't any problem over at Irving. There isn't any problem In a Pinch. It was all right there. When the place is closed, I say a prayer, because that means the end of the problems. As soon as that opens, and I don't care what they tell you, I'm telling you right now, from what I've seen for 24 years, as soon as that place is open, there's going to be more problems, and you owe the students of Concord High School something more than that. Lastly, there's a plan there about, I don't know, 15 years ago. A guy was out measuring the sidewalks and stuff, so I happened to be working there. And I asked him what was going on, and he said that they have big plans for that intersection because it was the most dangerous intersection in the city. He said that they were going to do it in 3 stages, and the first 2 stages have been done. The third one hasn't. But they do plan at some point to bring South Fruit Street over onto the state grounds, swing Warren Street a little bit harder, and realign the intersection because it is a very dangerous intersection, and I don't know whether it's going to get done or not, but that was the plans. And I got those from your traffic department at Concord. That you'd have to talk with. But I just want to close with just a story. I went to a thing at high school one time, and Arvin Goldberg was there, and he was the founder and CEO of Stop and Shop, which I believe owns Shaw's and Star Market and quite a few others. And when I went to high school, we had over 700 people entering class looking to graduate. When I graduated, 6 years later, there were 240 of us, every one of us accepted to a first-tier university, 20-something to Harvard. You owe that to your kids at Concord High School to shut this place down. As I remember him talking, he talked about equality of opportunity, and every kid in Boston Latin had that equality of opportunity. They didn't all take it. But there isn't another high school in this state that has a place like that that's operating right across the street, that tolerates what they tolerate, that contributes to it actively. It's just a disgrace to the city, it's a disgrace to the high school, and it's a disservice to every student from Concord High School. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in opposition? Mr. Pollack, would you like to offer factual rebuttal from what you heard?
I would only say that I'm sorry for the gentleman's experience. I know my client has plans to refurbish the property and hopefully avoid some of what's been experienced in the past. I know that Noria Energy has a very successful track record and platform of professional management, and I can't speak to any of the prior operators, and I take the gentleman at his word. But I'm hopeful that things will be different in the future if we're able to proceed.
Questions? Thank you very much.
Certainly.
Any comments from code enforcement?
No, sir.
Okay, so seeing none, we're going to then decide whether we want to reverse a code administrator's decision on the structure and land being abandoned. Discussion.
So I still think the structural, the setbacks and the lot coverage have not been abandoned. I think parking and loading have. And the more I think about it, I think driveway width and separation have, because I think those go along with abandonment of the non-conforming use.
Andrew?
Yeah, I think I agree. So effectively, one, I would be inclined to reverse, with all respect to Mr. Hall, acknowledging this is, just a straight interpretation issue. And I'd be inclined to affirm his ruling as to 2, 3, and 4. So,
That's parking, driveway width, and driveway separation.
yeah,
I guess technically I agree with Laura on this, but
It's a
as a
practical
practical
matter.
reality, those abandonments was because of a consequence of the overall property, and so I'm digesting it.
It doesn't mean they're done. They still have variance applications.
Oh, no, I understand, I'm just,
Yeah.
either it was abandoned, discontinued, or it wasn't.
Right.
And so, it would have been peculiar if the buildings were not operating, where people were still parking and using the driveways.
Sure.
Mr. Evans?
Well, I'll just restate, I found the argument on the ordinance language persuasive. I'm not clear on these other variances. I don't have a strong feeling about that, and I'm inclined to not bother with them.
Yeah, I'm on the fence with 2, 3, and 4, certainly 1 and 2. I see no issue with that. So I wonder if we want to take these matters up separately.
Sure.
You said 3 and 4?
2, 3, and 4. The matters on the driveway. All right, so let's do 1 and 2 first.
So I make a motion that we reverse the decision of the code enforcement officer and grant the appeal with regard to the 17.1 foot setback, the 13.5 foot setback, and the 84.8% lot coverage, numbers 1A, B, and C on the agenda.
Could I just make a point of order? And I'm sorry to do this, but A and B have multiple setback relief in them. If you
All of A and B.
A, B, and C.
Yes.
Thank you.
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
I make a motion that we affirm the decision of the code enforcement officer and deny the appeal with regard to number 2, 2872E, parking and loading, because I believe those were abandoned along with the use.
Do you want to include 3 and 4 with that?
I thought we were gonna do them separately, just in
Okay.
case.
All right, let's do 2.
I second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
It's 4-1.
And I make a motion that we affirm the decision of the code enforcement officer and deny the appeal with regard to 3 and 4 driveway width and driveway separation, because I believe those were also abandoned as part of the use.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
4-1. Okay. So
So
now
variances.
So now we request a variance.
Okay. So, adjusting for all of that somewhat on the fly. As to the variances, and those that are remaining, just to be clear, they relate to parking and stacking spaces at the gas island. And so what the site allows in terms of dimensional spacing is 1 car at each side of each pump, 4 spaces. The ordinance requires a stacking space of 1.5 spaces per fueling location. And so the ordinance actually would require 10. We simply cannot fit that with the peninsula shape of the lot and the road configuration. The driveway width, again, I'll make reference to the turning radius diagram at Exhibit E in the application. There's simply no physical way to get the delivery truck in and out of there without significant risk of damage. And as far as the driveway separations are concerned, this is an existing lot of record. It is conforming in terms of size remarkably, given its configuration. The driveway separations along Pleasant and Warren, and the driveway separations from the neighboring lot all require relief. With respect to the neighboring lot, I think it's probably important to mention for your record that the relief there is seeking to preserve an 85-foot separation on each of Pleasant and Warren, whereas the requirement is 100. So in terms of order of magnitude, it's not terribly significant. In terms of the distance from the intersection, I hate the phrase, but it is what it is, applies. Again, we're talking about what's necessary to move vehicles through the site. I need to spend just a minute on the variance criteria from the statute and ordinance. The variance would not be contrary to the public interest because the use, of course, serves general motorist and pedestrian needs of the community, and the current configuration of the building, the driveways, the canopy, the fueling island, and particularly with respect to the building and coverage, which has now been found to be pre-existing and legal, those are nonconformities that have existed for years, and you essentially back into these other problems. The variance is consistent with the spirit of the ordinance. The use is recognized as a conditional use in that district, and it's otherwise located in at least a predominantly commercial and non-residential corridor. I think there are some apartments there, but the predominant use is commercial, education, institutional. The state campus is right there as well. Substantial justice would be done because the site has historically operated with this use, and it would be reoccupied and refurbished if we could move through the planning process. There's no greater dimensional relief sought than what exists today or what has existed in the recent past. And without relief, and given the challenges of the lot and the intersection, I suspect that the vacancy will linger indefinitely, and I can't imagine that's in anyone's interest, and certainly not in the interest of the surrounding owners interested in improving conditions and protecting property values. The refurbishment, I think, would add some aesthetic value that would only help when it comes to market value. Literal enforcement of the ordinance results in a hardship because the peninsula shape of the lot, while again it's remarkably legal in size, it just can't be effectively redeveloped without some relief on these issues. The relief that we're seeking is just simply consistent with the existing condition, the truck turning radius, the distance to the other properties, and, you know, put differently, you know, if you're able to see the uses being reasonable, and it's been historic, whoever proposes a reasonable use out there is bound to face the same or similar obstacles for coverage, or, well, not coverage any longer, but parking and driveways and separation. And so what we're asking you to do tonight is vote in favor of those three remaining items in the form of variances, and that allows us again to go forward to the planning board. It doesn't allow the station to reopen. We still need permission for the use. So I'll leave it there, and I thank you for your attention.
Questions?
Does anyone, and by anyone I mean any of you, code, or any on the board, do you know whether there have been issues with cars stacking without having the required stacking space?
I believe the city's position would be that because of the two entrances without any organized fashion in or out, it has been a problematic property in that regard.
Yeah.
I do anticipate that to be a planning issue when it comes to conditional use. We did query the police department for accident data, and Steve, forgive me if I'm remembering this incorrectly, but I think we were able to identify one accident within the last several years, and it was more at the intersection than at the property.
Okay.
I mean, it isn't great.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just trying to remember when it was open, if I ever saw sort of cars dangling out, and I don't know.
I have a memory of some of that.
Yeah.
Again, somewhat remarkably, given the size of the site, the number of spaces provided for the store based upon its square footage is conforming.
Compliant.
So we have not asked for that variance. We actually had asked for it, and staff was kind enough to correct us.
Any questions? Any other questions? Thank you very much. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard in favor of the appeal? Is there anyone who'd like to be heard in opposition to the appeal? Please step forward again.
Am I still under oath?
Yes, yes, you are.
Please state your name again, sir.
Sure. Robert Every, Easton, New Hampshire. With relation to the 5 points that they have to satisfy, the first one, contrary to the public interest. And I would have to say, if you look through that third item that's attached there, the history, all the things that have gone on, I've heard so many times, we're gonna clean the place up, we're gonna fix the place up, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. None of it has ever taken place. It has remained a real detriment, not only to the neighborhood and to the school, but to the people. The place is terrible. The spirit, I think the spirit of the thing, again, goes right back to that number 3. The things that have gone on there, and those are documented. That's not something that's, you know, being pulled out of the air. Substantial justice is done for who? The applicant or the neighborhood? The value of surrounding properties are not diminished. Well, you have the letter to the Concord Assessing Department. They did reduce the taxes because of all the problems there. They did diminish the values of the property. They still do. You also have the plans from the Concord Traffic Department. As to whether they are gonna, change the intersection or not, I don't honestly know, but you do have those plans. If they do, they're gonna take that front part of the land by eminent domain, and I think the best thing that could happen would be that that would take place. You people are the movers and the shakers in Concord, and you could probably talk with the councilors and the mayor and maybe get that done. You could put in a park there. There wouldn't be any issues with the kids. It's, as I said, high school is a lot different from when I went, but I certainly think they deserve a better chance than what they're gonna get with that place there. And then, lastly, literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. For who? For the applicant? For the people of Concord? You're the ones that have to make that decision. I can't make that decision for you. But I think that you have enough there to say no. I hope you do. There's really not a lot I can add to it unless you had any particular questions. I try to answer them, but. Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Every.
you're welcome.
Any comments from code enforcement?
No, sir.
Mr. Polican, would you like to offer any additional factual rebuttal from what you just heard?
The gentleman is entitled to his opinion. I believe much of what he's raising are matters in the purview of the planning board when it comes to conditional use and site plan impacts. And I'm sure we'll have a robust discussion if we're able to get there.
Thank you very much. And with that, I'll declare the hearing closed. So we have 3 items that we're going to request for a variance, items 2, 3, and 4. Andrew?
I just want to acknowledge, and I do appreciate the gentleman. He drove it quite a distance and spoke very passionately and sincerely, and my casual observations, I don't think what he said was necessarily inaccurate, but I also think that it doesn't go to these variance requests. It's really a police issue, and I hope the new owners do listen and maybe even sit down and talk to him and the other neighbors, because I do think there's issues there, but we don't have the authority to just shut down a business and not allow any business there. These setbacks these variance requests are, there's no way to get around these variances if you're gonna run any kind of operation there because of the very odd shape. It's not an ideal lot, but it is a lot, and a business is allowed to operate there. So I'd be inclined to approve the variances.
Any comments?
I would agree. I think that the kinds of issues the gentleman was talking about are not determined by the physical nature of the site. It has its myriad of difficulties. So I would be inclined to agree with the variances.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little bit in a pickle. I think if there had never been a gas station there, we would never allow this type of use permits, which is why on the previous vote I decided that, it wasn't abandoned, it should be some sort of a continuation of it, but you all didn't get that. So, I don't know if I'm gonna get you home tonight, all right, but.
Faith in the rest of you.
I don't have any concerns about the driveway width and separation variances. I was going to ask you if you could move them any further away from the intersection, but it doesn't matter because it infringes on the other side too, and obviously you need them given the size of the trucks that are accessing the property. I have a concern about the stacking one from a public health and safety welfare standpoint, but if you're telling me that the police tell you there's been no accidents as a result of that, I'm willing to accept that at face value, so I too would be inclined to grant all 3 variances.
And I agree, I think the hardship is well demonstrated because of the peculiar nature of the lot, its shape and size. Any motions?
I'll move approval for all three.
All three? Is there a second?
I have a second. Yep.
Any discussion?
Yes. Only because we now need to make findings of fact, otherwise we get in
Oh.
trouble.
Proceed.
So, the driveway width variances, I would find that allowing them is not contrary to the public interest or spirit of the ordinance because it doesn't alter the essential character of the neighborhood or create a health, safety, or welfare issue. Do not believe it's going to reduce surrounding property values. I don't think there's any benefit to the city that is not outweighed by the loss to the applicant. And the lot is obviously unique and uniquely burdened by the restrictions given its shape and location, and the use being a permitted use, once the conditional use permit is granted, is a reasonable one. So that's why I think the width variances should be granted. As far as the separation variances, very similar thoughts. Again, it doesn't alter the essential character of the neighborhood because it's there. There's no public health, safety, or welfare issue. Substantial justice is done. It's not going to diminish surrounding property values, and the property is unique and the use is reasonable. As for the stacking, given that it is a pre-existing use, albeit abandoned, and given the testimony about a lack of accidents from the stacking into the street, I would find that it is not contrary to the public interest or spirit of the ordinance. I do not believe having fewer parking spaces is going to diminish surrounding property values. I think substantial justice is done. And again, the unnecessary hardship is the unique shape and location of the property, and the use is a reasonable one.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
No, I was an aye.
Okay.
Yes.
Motion carries, 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, our next case tonight is case 42-2264 River Road, RO Open Space Residential District. Applicant needs to replace the existing deck on the west side of the house and wishes to expand from a 6-foot by 6-foot to a 6-foot, 5-inch by 12-foot, and is requesting a variance from Article 28.4.1, Table of Dimensional Regulations, to permit a structure to be located within 2 feet 4 inches to the western side property line where a 40-foot side setback is required. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
As you testify, please state your name.
My name is Jared Schmento, I'm at 64 River Road.
Natasha Schimento, 64 River Road.
Sorry, your first name?
Natasha.
Thank you. What would you like us to know?
So the property is obviously non-conforming. Pretty much everything on it doesn't conform to any setbacks. The west side of the property only has about 8 foot of property from the house, and there is a 6-foot by 6-foot deck there that was damaged 2 years ago in a car accident, so it needs to be replaced. Insurance has written it off, and we've torn it down and begun construction and had to stop due to not having the permits. So it's 6 inches closer to that setback. I think it's 7 inches closer, so it's gonna be 6 foot 5 inches. And then it's gonna be 12 foot long. It's gonna be built over our bulkhead, so it doesn't actually increase the footprint of the building any. It's just gonna be a larger deck, but it's built over a structure. So we'd be asking for a 7-inch increase or decrease for the setback. If that makes sense.
What was the original deck setback?
It was 35 inches from the property line, I believe it was.
And that's your first diagram, that we're seeing, right?
Yes, the first site plan is the proposed, and it's, the original one was 6 foot 6 inches, or 6 by 6. You can't really see it there, but it was a 35-inch line. That's the setback to my neighbor's property, and by increasing it to the 6.5 by 12, it'd make it 28 inches to the property line.
Oh, so you're just going over the bulkhead?
We're going over the bulkhead, yes. There'll be a door through the deck to get to the bulkhead.
And I hate to dither about 6 inches, but why can't it be the exact same width as the original deck?
Because of the way the bulkhead is in the foundation, like
Okay.
the pillars coming through, you need that extra bit of, I think they call it picture framing around the posts.
Okay, thank you.
What's in that little triangular lot there? Is there any structure?
No,
Who, is it?
that is my neighbor's property. His house is on the other side of the road.
on the
So
other
it's
side
just
of
his
the-
water access.
Yes, that's his water access, yes,
And is that Mr. Gilbert?
Mr. Gilbert.
Other questions?
Thanks for including the picture of the upside down car.
Oh, my goodness.
Just in case we doubted there was a car accident. we wanted to-
All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard in favor of the appeal? Is there anyone who'd like to be heard against the appeal? I do have a letter from Mark Cornell, who I believe is an abutter, lives at 71 River Road, and he is supporting the requested variance. He says it'll be consistent with the character of the neighborhood, and it would not harm the value of any properties. Code enforcement, comments?
No comments. They've been very responsive to our request for information.
Okay, with that, I'll declare the hearing closed. And start on this end, Jim.
Yeah, I'm inclined to support it. I think the applicant's doing a good job to be as conforming as possible. The fact that it's, he's sacrificing the bulkhead in order to not expand the footprint is helpful to getting me to yes.
I agree.
Andrew?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a reasonable use to want to have a bigger deck, and the fact that the property line they're getting very slightly closer to is not, doesn't even have a structure on it, I think is important.
I agree. I don't think it alters the essential character of the neighborhood. I think there's no diminution of surrounding property values. I think there is no substantial justice from denying the variance. The property is obviously unique, given its size, and the use is reasonable.
Thank you, and I agree. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
I'll move approval.
Oh,
I'll move approval.
sorry.
I'll second.
It's gonna be a long night, I can tell.
I did. Thank you. Thanks, Rose.
Again, no,
Now we
any
can say it.
any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say. Motion carries 5-0. Okay. Okay. Next case tonight is case 47-2263 Bog Road, RM Medium Density Residential District. Applicant wishes to install a second freestanding sign on the westerly side of the driveway and is requesting a variance to Article 2868A1, signs permitted in residential district, to allow a second freestanding sign with a combined sign area of 32 square feet, where only one freestanding sign with an area of up to 20 square feet is allowed.
Yeah.
Do we swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state your name as you testify.
Hi, my name is Justin Stevens. I'm here with my brother,
Eric Stevens.
we're two
First
of the...
name?
Eric Stevens.
Thank you.
We are two of the three owners of the barn at Bull Meadow, a wedding and event center at 63 Bog Road. We're here today requesting a zoning variance so that we can install this second sign, as Mr. Wallner just described. This second sign would face westward on Bog Road. So on that diagram, the one on the left is existing, face east. The one we're proposing is the one on the right. A variance is required because in a residential district, only one freestanding sign is allowed with a total square footage of 20 feet. The sign we'd like to install is 4 feet by 4 feet, so 16 square feet. It's identical to the existing sign that we have on the property today, but on the other side of the driveway, facing west. We'd like to install this sign because since we opened about just under 2 years ago, we found that many of our customers come from the west, and they can't see our existing signs, so they often get lost and end up turning around in our neighbors' driveways. There are wetlands on both sides of our driveway, the entire length of our driveway, as well as along Bog Road. So that's our driveway, as you can see there, and at the top is where it intersects with Bog Road. In a residential district, a freestanding sign needs to be at least 10 feet from the front lot line. So installing a double-sided sign would have forced us to impact the wetlands. So we made the decision to have our initial sign facing eastward, because that's where most of our traffic's coming. And also, we would have had to clear trees to do that. So just going through the 5 criteria, granting this variance will not be contrary to the public interest because construction of this sign does not unduly and in a marked degree conflict with any of the 9 explicitly stated zoning ordinance purposes listed in the zoning code. Granting this variance will be consistent with observing the spirit of the ordinance because this sign would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. There are many other signs in the neighborhood, including our existing identical sign in the Vineyard condo community directly across the street from us. This sign would certainly not threaten the public health, safety, or welfare. In fact, installing it will help prevent our customers from getting lost and turning around in our neighbors' driveways, which should in turn improve public health and safety. Sorry, I'm gonna hand it over to Eric.
Yeah, I'll just speak to the other criteria here. So substantial justice is done by granting this variance because granting this variance would not cause any harm to the general public and would outweigh the benefit to us by not doing that. Property values would not be diminished in granting this variance because the appearance of the property will remain the same and the new sign would be identical to our existing sign. The sign would not increase the traffic count at all on Bog Road. If anything, it would cut down on it by having less people have to turn around. And it would not increase the noise on Bog Road either because it's the same amount of traffic. It would just hopefully not be missing our driveway and turning around. In terms of unnecessary hardship, literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship if it is not granted because there are special conditions to the property because of the lot size in relation to everything else there. And the abundance of the wetlands. We really don't want to impact that at all if we can avoid it. And by placing another sign on the opposite side of the driveway, we can prevent that. Our property's also, like I said, is much larger, and our building, because of how far it's set back, is impossible to see. So it's not something that a guest would be driving by and say, "Oh, there it is," without seeing a sign.
The one other thing I'd want to say, these signs aren't for advertising. You don't find our business by driving down Bog Road and finding a wedding venue. I don't think we've ever got a customer from that. This is not for advertising. It's really so people can locate our business. So when they're trying to find it, they're not getting lost and turning around and driving all around the neighborhood. We just want people to be able to find us, and we're trying to work around the wetlands without impacting it any more than we already have, to be honest. So thank you all very much for hearing us. If you have any questions, let us know.
Why can't it be a compliant size?
So we're only allowed one sign.
Right, no, I understand that, but you're also seeking a variance because the sign you want is bigger than what's allowed?
One sign's allowed a total of 20 square feet for that one sign.
Okay,
We have one sign right now that's 16 square feet.
yeah,
So it's below the maximum. We're looking to add another sign
of 16
of
square feet.
16, yes.
Would a 2-sided sign count as?
It doesn't double the count. Yeah, so you could have a 16-sided double sign in this area, a 16 square foot double-sided sign. The issue is we can't run our sign perpendicular to Bog Road without going into the wetlands because we have to be 10 feet off Bog Road. We have to be 10 feet off the front of our property. It's in, with the sign. That's the closest we can get.
Right.
So in order to make it visible from both directions, it would have to be like parallel with our driveway, which
Oh, I
would,
see. Right
which
now
would
you have
force
it-
the post to be in the wetlands.
Right, okay, I understand.
Yeah, I tried with those images. That's what I was trying to describe, the ones that I sent earlier today.
And you do have copies in front of you if you didn't notice.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just sent those today. So this image here shows what a double-sided sign would have looked like. It would have had to go into the wetlands, and then we would have had to clear all the trees on the left-hand side for it to even be visible. I think if you go to the image of our existing sign, if you can imagine that being double-sided, all those trees to the right of it would block, you would never be able to see it. And there's wetland flags right on those trees immediately behind our sign.
And you can't do double-sided on the other, across the way there where you want the new sign to go.
It's the
I think that's what
exact
you're talking
same,
about.
it's actually a little bit closer. These are approximates.
Yeah.
But the wetland's actually even a little bit closer.
Got it.
Further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who wants to be heard in favor of this appeal? Anyone who wants to speak in opposition to this appeal?
Please
Come on
come
up.
up and state your name.
Come on up. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and,
Melanie Barker from Pentacle, New Hampshire. I know of the business, I've seen it from its inception and being built out. It is definitely wetlands. The signage now is pleasing to the public, and I believe is situated in such a manner that the majority of the clientele would be coming from the direction to see the signage. I'm questioning whether or not they can just seek a variance on the 10 feet distance from their front property line to be able to orient that one sign to be able to be a double-sided visible signage for their business rather than having a second sign in an area where there are obviously zoning rules to keep businesses in the area in compliance. It is still very residential in that area. Just,
questions? Thank you very much.
thank you.
We'll get a clarification in a minute. Code enforcement.
No comments.
All right, I have a couple of letters here. Jeff Tobine from 57 Bog Road is in favor of the appeal. He remarks that traffic coming from the opposite direction overshoot the driveway and have to turn around on his property. Andrew Taragni from 67 Bog Road says that several vehicles miss the entrance and sometimes turn around in the next possible driveway. And finally, Jocelyn Jerry Walcott is in a butter to Bull Meadow and is in opposition. She sees no need to increase the size of the sign, so she would not allow the 30-foot square foot sign. Would you like to offer factual rebuttal from what you just heard? Come on up.
The only thing I'd add is that there are street signs. You can see them in the image there. So if our sign, if we did go that route, which is something we've considered, it would be right next to the sidewalk, and those street signs would also be blocking it. So you see our mailbox right next to that. I don't know exactly what the street sign is, but there is a street sign right there. So, thank you.
All right. And with that, I'll declare the hearing closed. Comments or a motion?
Yeah, I think that, I know they've been in front of us numerous times, or at least a couple of times, and when we first approved, I think it was the use, this probably was somewhat, could have been predicted by somebody that it would get to this, because obviously there needs to be a sign on both sides. And I suppose they could have asked for a variance to get closer, and we might have looked at that carefully, but it's kind of their choice, but I I think some variance is needed. I'm not sure one is, in my mind, is better than the other. So this is their choice. I don't think it's a huge impact on the neighborhood.
We need a second before we discuss.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I assume that was a second, and then you
Second.
discuss?
Do copy and paste all of everything I just said.
No, I think that it's the appropriate solution. I think the applicant made it clear that this is much more an issue of safety and the traveling public being able to get where they need to go, as opposed to a loud advertisement for the property. So I think and the fact that we're respecting the wetlands and trying not to remove trees is to the, you know, the betterment of the community, neighborhood.
Any other comments? No?
Agreed.
Seeing none, let's put it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, we're almost halfway through the agenda. 6 more cases. All right, our next case tonight is case 48-22, 32 Amy Way. Applicants wish to construct a 24-foot by 24-foot garage with an attached 8-foot by 12-foot breezeway onto an existing single-family dwelling and is requesting a variance to Article 2841H, Table of Dimensional Regulations to permit a structure to be located to within 7 feet 6 inches to the northerly side property line where a 15-foot setback is required. Please come forward. You swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
As you testify, please state your names.
My name is Alex Eddy, 32 Amy Way.
Karen Eddy, 32 Amy Way.
Great. What would you like us to know?
We wish to construct, obviously, a 24 by 24 garage with an attached 8 by 12 breezeway, perimeter structure closer. In the front of the garage is 9 feet 2 inches to the fence, and the back side of the garage is 7 feet 6 inches in the back of the property to the setback of 15 feet. So we need a variance for to be 6 feet to the closest part of the fence.
And can you speak to the hardship issue?
The hardship issue would be, I'm just trying to get a garage in my area, so we're one of, say, 15 houses that don't have a garage. So I'm just trying to not comply, but trying to better our house if we could.
Based on the sketch, it looks like if you did not construct the breezeway, you would comply with setbacks.
Correct.
So can you help me understand why you need the breezeway?
Just be easier access to the house, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what yeah, that'd be just the hardship, just not to have it, that's all.
Okay, thank you.
Because, you know,
The houses that have garages in that neighborhood, do they have breezeways?
I'm gonna say probably, I'm guesstimating 50% of them probably have breezeways.
So some don't, though.
Correct.
this is a pretty new development, right?
No, then, like Sonoma Drive was the new section they just added on, but the Alice Drive, Amy Way, Ty Lane, Taylor Lane's been there for a number of years, 15 odd years or so.
Are you the first owner? Did you build a house, or?
Nope, we're the third owner.
And do you know the houses that have garages, do they comply with setbacks, or?
My contractor, he was under the assumption there was a 10-foot setback. I don't know, there was some, I don't know the verbiage, but we are in the RM zone. He thought we were in a different zone, but I don't know what, so you can be 10 feet to not 15.
Right, but the other garages, are they in the setback, or do they comply?
There's a few that he built that are 10 feet, like 10-foot setback, so they're a little bit closer to the, as we were requesting.
Could you go behind the house and then extend your driveway?
That's a good question. We were gonna go behind, well, behind, what do you mean behind the house?
Or maybe I'm not.
If you look at the picture there, we can scroll down a little bit, whatever. It's kind of an angle, so it's kind of like a weird shape. It looks straight there, but it's not really that straight, because obviously in the front of the garage is 9 foot 2 inches, and in the back of the garage is 7 foot 6 inches. I was gonna try to move it forward, but then I'm in trouble with the variance in the front of the house to the road. You see what I'm saying? So if I tried to move it back a little bit, I'd be getting closer to the fence. To his,
Yeah.
This might,
Yeah, I see, I need to look at this way, right?
yeah.
Can you go back to the?
yes, sir.
Thank you. So on the other side of the house where you're not gonna build a garage, what's that structure, and is it in the setback?
That's just like a platform. It's not really a structure, it's just like a platform.
Like a deck platform or?
Well, it's like a hot tub platform, but the hot tub's not there anymore, so it doesn't serve any purpose or anything. Matter of fact, we're taking it out anyway, so,
But it's not in the setback? Yeah, I mean, it's in the
It
setback.
is in the setback.
yeah.
But it's temporary, it could be moved, so no.
Oh, yeah, you can, yeah.
What's in the rear?
What do you mean?
What's along the back wall?
Patio
back?
or?
That'd be our pool.
There's a pool there, and the other structure is a shed that was been there.
So that's in the setback too?
Yep.
I think is a shed allowed, might be allowed.
I think it
5
depends on the
feet.
size.
Yeah.
It's like a 8 by 10, that's a small shed or whatever it is.
And it was there when you acquired the property? Yeah.
And I believe there's a letter from, this young lady helped me with a letter from the neighbor saying he was an improvement of the,
I didn't see that.
Can you pan back out, David?
So, yep. How far?
A little bit further. Yeah, that'd be good. Thank you.
see, like now, that's obviously, that's an old picture, so the,
2020.
that is 2020, okay, so obviously this road over here is not, you don't show the, like Sonoma Drive or anything like that. The new development that I was talking about.
Any more questions? Andrew?
No.
You sure? Yeah. I don't have a letter that he's referring to in my packet.
Yeah, I don't have a letter either.
I think none of us have it.
Maybe that was it. Hold on, I'll pull it up on the screen for you if that is there.
That's for case 4822.
It's from Ray Petrulio.
Didn't scan it.
I'll get to it shortly. Let me do some other things.
Okay.
So if there's anything else you'd like us to know?
I don't think so.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who'd like to be heard in favor of this appeal? Is there anyone who'd like to be heard in opposition to this appeal? Mr. Hall, if you have that letter, you're welcome to introduce it. If you haven't, just read it to us.
I have it, I can't read it, I don't know if someone has better eyes than I.
Pass it around.
You got pretty good eyes, I don't think I can read it either.
Mr. Eddie, have you read this letter?
Yes.
Can you tell us what it says?
He just says he was in favor of the garage.
And who, is he a direct abutter?
Correct.
Right. Okay, we'll take,
Seems to be 4 signatures, 2 signatures in?
Probably Ray and Tiffany as well.
Yes.
okay, so you've got, all right. Code enforcement, comments?
No, sir.
All right, with that, I'll declare the hearing closed. Who wants to start?
I have a little concern that, that I certainly respect their desire for a garage. I would not want to live anywhere without a garage in this neck of the woods. But the breezeway is my question, because if they didn't have to have the breezeway, they wouldn't have to be here. And so it's not the garage, which I understand, but it's the breezeway that's the issue. And I think the general approach is that we give minimal relief, not maximum relief. And I think that would go against that approach. So I would be inclined to deny.
I see your logic.
Such as it is.
I mean, the only comment I have is that we did hear testimony that some of the properties do have breezeways, whether they're conforming or not. We didn't hear testimony to that effect.
I would just say we also heard testimony that somebody made some mistakes about the proper setbacks in that neighborhood, so.
We did.
I think this neighborhood is,
It's a fairly new neighborhood.
it's a fairly new neighborhood, and it was one developer who developed all of them, and so they built some of them with garages and some without, because some people don't want a garage. So I tend to agree with Ted. A breezeway is nice, but I can't really see the hardship, because the builder could have plotted this out. I mean, they had to divide up the lots, get as many as they could out of the lots, and this lot couldn't fit a garage, or they could have placed it in a slightly different place when they developed it, but that was kind of the developer's decision. So unfortunately, I have to agree. I think they could either do a one-car garage with a breezeway or a two-car garage without a breezeway.
I agree.
Andrew, you making
I'll
a
move
motion?
denial.
Oh, denial. Who's seconded?
I'll second it.
All right. Any further discussion?
Yes. Sorry.
No, we appreciate it.
I think granting the variance would alter the essential character of the neighborhood, because as everyone has said, it's a relatively new neighborhood, and based on what I'm seeing, it looks like most of the structures, particularly in the immediate vicinity, do comply with setbacks. I think that substantial justice is done by the denial of the variance, because they can still construct their garage, they just can't construct the breezeway, and the garage is what the entire variance application is based on. I don't know one way or another whether it would diminish surrounding property values, but no evidence has been presented on that, so we have to find that it would diminish surrounding property values. And I don't think there's anything unique about the property which burdens it differently than any other property in the area, so I don't think any of the variance criteria are met.
So it's been made, its motion's been made and seconded. Further discussion, seeing none. All in favor of denying the request signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion is denied, 5-0. All right, let's just take a couple of minute break here. You can ask the question of the code enforcement officer if you like. I say if you have a question, you can ask the code enforcement officer.
Dave.
82. New lot created by the merger of 76 Community Drive, 83 High Street, and 87 High Street in an RN neighborhood residential district. Applicant wishes to redevelop the reference properties into a merged lot to accommodate a child daycare and community meeting facilities and seeks the following variances to Article 2824J, Table of Uses, Use B4, to allow a child daycare facility in an RN district where such is only allowed with a special exception. And Article 2824J, Table of Uses, Use B14, to allow a community center in an RN district where such use is only allowed with a special exception. And Article 2841H, to permit lot coverage of 65% when a maximum of 50% is allowed. And Article 28540B1, to allow a 6-foot fence in the front yard of a residential district where a maximum of 4 feet is allowed. And Article 2872E, to allow 25 parking spaces where 53 are required. And Article 2875, to allow 2 handicap parking spaces where 3 are required. And finally, Article 287-7G1, to allow off-street parking in a front yard of a residential district where such parking is not permitted. Do you all swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
As you testify, please state your name.
My name is Connie Boyles Lane, and I'm with the law firm of Oren Reno here in Concord. And beside me is Aaron Lambert of Wilcox and Barton. And on the other side of me is Chris Eman, who's the executive director of the Boys and Girls Club here in Concord. And behind us in the first row is Kathy Furlong, who is now on the Boys and Girls Club board, but was formerly the executive director of Pentacle Community Center. So if you want to go to the next slide, thanks. So this is the proposed Pentacle Community Center and the child care facility that we're here to talk to you about tonight. This facility, the child care facility, was the major reason for the merger between the Boys and Girls Club and Pentacle Community Center earlier this year. And in the spring of this year, when the city administration learned that we were doing this project, they approached us to ask if we would include additional square footage to include the community center. And that's why there's 2 entrances when you look at that. One is for the community center, and one is for the child care. And I'm sure that, you go on the next one. I'm sure that most of you know the Boys and Girls Club in Concord, but just to kind of give you a little background, they have 6 locations in Concord. They were established in 1944. They have about 25 early learning centers and after-school programs, and they provide services to 1,000 kids a week in central New Hampshire. The Pentacle Community Center, and I'm going to say PCC if you don't mind because it's a mouthful, was established in 1948. It was built by the community. It opened in 1953, and it served as for 70 years as a community center. In 1992, they added child care as a special, and got a special exception from the board to do that. You can go to the next slide. As you heard, we're asking for 7 variances. There's 2 for uses, 3 for parking, 1 for the 6-foot fence and for the child care for the playground, and 65% lot coverage. So, rather than put you through, I'm going to have to go through, there's 7 variances, and I hate to put you through the 5 criterion for every single one. They're pretty much all the same reasoning for the 5 criterion. And so the project contains 2 uses that have been there since 1953 and 1992, and the only reason that we're here really is because we merged the lots, the 4 tax lots. Otherwise, we'd be grandfathered. Excuse me. It is compatible with the neighborhood. It's been there 70 years. It improves the parking and the aesthetics at the property and the traffic flow in the community. It provides much-needed services to the Pentacle community. The City Council believes the project will provide substantial benefit to the Pentacle community because it granted the Boys and Girls Club a $750,000 CDBG grant in July 11th. And the denial prevents the continued uses that have been there for 30 and 70 years, and the use is reasonable. So I've kind of summed that all up because it really applies to all the 7 variances in slightly different ways. So this is the existing property, and it's circled in red. And if you want to go to the next slide, that's the GIS, and that shows you the 4 lots that were merged, and they have been merged, and that's completed. You can go to the next slide. These these 3 slides, the next 2 included, are pictures of the existing site, which I thought you should see if you're not familiar with the property. So the next slide is an existing conditions survey that Aaron put together. The blue shows where the existing buildings are in relation to what we're going to show you for the proposed site plan. So if you want to go, so I'm going to have Erin take over now, and she's going to explain the site plan to you and some of the details, and then I'll run through the more boring legal stuff in a bit.
Would you mind going back 1 slide? I just want to, so again, Erin Lambert, Wilcox and Barton. We're the site civil engineer. So as you can see on the existing conditions survey, in addition to the buildings, I've highlighted where there's pavement. And one of the reasons this is such an improvement for traffic and for the neighborhood is right now all of the parking backs out either into Community Drive or Dolphin Street. So you can see it's just one wide curb cut. There's really no delineation. That sidewalk, crosswalk that I've highlighted in yellow, you can see it's just kind of in the middle of a sea of pavement. If you go to the next slide, it'll show you what we're proposing. So we are proposing to reduce all those curb cuts to 2 single curb cuts. So that would be a one-way driveway through the property from Community Drive, kind of winds its way through. It goes past the entrance to the Pentacle Community Center, turns the corner, and provides both an active drop-off or sort of short-term parking when they're dropping off or picking up, and then provides parking spaces. So you're seeing 25 parking spaces, 2 of which are ADA accessible. There are currently no ADA accessible parking spaces designated on the property. It also provides parking for 2 vans/buses that are used by the Boys and Girls Club. Currently those are parked on the undeveloped lawn behind, so they'll have 2 designated spaces. Provides adequate dumpster with proper screening, a shed. And then as you see on the west portion of the site, that is the playground. This is a licensed childcare facility that comes with lots of requirements. Connie will talk a little bit about that as it relates to the fence. So that is the playground area. The reason that the one-way works so well is that it really will help facilitate the drop-off and pickup in the area. So one of the things that's good timing of this project is the city in the 2023 capital improvement plan is planning to reconstruct Dolphin Street. So in addition to the 25 parking spaces on the site, there will be 10 parallel spaces created on the street. Now those will be public spaces. They'll be available to the neighbors as well as community members coming to the Pentacle Community Center, parents and staff. As part of the project, the Boys and Girls Club is going to build the sidewalk that you see. So that will be a wonderful improvement. It will include crosswalks both across High Street as well as across Community Drive, directing people to Rolfe Park. And so if you were to cross the street just off to the right side, there is ample parking there to help support this use and also is available for larger events. The lot coverage today is 32%. One of the variances we're requesting is lot coverage of 65%, where 50 is allowed. Part of the reason for that is the extensive sidewalks. We're making all of the doors ADA accessible and making sure we have good connections to both High Street, Dolphin Street, and Community Drive. As well as the playground surfaces, the dumpster pad, the shed. And one of the ways that we'll be mitigating that additional increase in impervious area is all of the water will be infiltrated on site. So while there will be more impervious than allowed, which is why we're asking for the variance, part of the way we will mitigate that is the underground infiltration. So recognizing that this is just the first step in the permitting process, I just wanted to share all of the lighting will be fully downcast and compliant with the dark sky ordinance. The new lighting today has lots of controls, and so they will be programmed. They will definitely be lowered in the evening when events are not happening, and it's easy to turn them on or down, you know, should there be an anomaly in a typical schedule because there's an event. So we're very sensitive to the fact that this is in a residential neighborhood, and the lighting will be consistent with, and we'll have those controls built in. And the other thing I wanted to mention was landscaping. So where you see the parking parallel to Dolphin Street, it's not exactly parallel. It's about 15 feet wide on one end and 20 feet on the other. And we're going to create a robust landscape strip there. So there'll be shrubs all along the parking to prevent headlights. And then there'll be a small retaining wall, and then there'll be street trees. So we've been working with the city on that. There'll also be street trees along High Street, some landscaping that you can see. And then with the residential buffer in the back, that screening will be a combination of a fence and plantings, recognizing that when we put plantings in, they're not immediately a buffer. So all of that will come in the site plan process, but since we're here for the use variance, I wanted to just share with you, those are things we've considered and are in the design process and will be fully vetted through the planning board. I'll turn it back to Connie.
Thank you. So I'm going to turn now to the more formal side of explaining how we meet the 5 criterion of each of the 7 variances. So in the uses, there's 2 uses that we're asking for. It's a community center and a child daycare facility. The uses, both of them, are not contrary to the public interest because the PCC has been an integral part of this neighborhood since 1953. It was actually built by the community between 1948 and 1953, before zoning ordinances existed, and then was expanded to include child daycare in 1992 through a special exception. The RN zoning district permits these uses as special exceptions. Thus, the ordinance anticipated that these uses were compatible in an RN district. As I mentioned before, the reason we are here asking for some of these variances is because we merged the lots. Child daycare is an off-cited need of the residents, and the temporary closure of PCC, of the daycare at PCC, it's been closed now, and it's over at the Boys and Girls Club on Bradley Street, has been a real, it's been a harm to the parents, and they couldn't take all of them, and some of them couldn't, I guess some of them couldn't find other places. I don't know, Chris, if you want to speak to that.
No, well, how do I put this? So my name is Chris Eman. I'm the executive director of the Boys and Girls Club. When we notified parents that we were going to temporarily relocate them, that certainly caused some angst, but at that time, the board had made the decision that we were going to go back, and it was important to have a presence in the neighborhood of Pentacle, to be honest with you. So that is really the reason that we want to get back to that area. We kind of made a promise to the residents and to the citizens of Pentacle that we would do that, knowing that that would be a pretty massive undertaking with a campaign to get the building to where it needs to be.
Okay, thanks. PCC's been a critical part of this community and this neighborhood, like I said, for over 70 years. And the City Council believes that the project's going to provide substantial benefits for Pentacle and the rest of Concord. Current plans, nothing's been set in stone yet for the community center, include a satellite library similar to what's up at the Heights. And then they'll run the usual community programming that they've done for the past 70 years and work with the city and the community in providing those programs. Substantial justice will be done by giving us these variances because the loss of the community center and the child care program is a blow to the families and the residents that have come to rely on both of these uses over the past 30 to 70 years. The surrounding property values will not be diminished because it's been there for 70 years and it has not and actually, we're providing an upgrade to the site. So they will not diminish. In fact, they may be well increased, but I have no evidence to that effect. Due to the special conditions of the property, there is a hardship because allowing only permitted uses would deny the improvement of the site consistent with its prior uses and deny the public of the benefits of the community center and the child care. Hence, it's also a reasonable use. The next, if you want to go on to the next slide, next 2 slides, I think. You can, that's just a summary of what I just said. Next variance we're requesting is a 6-foot fence near the property. It's required for licensing for daycare. It's providing additional security for the children. A 6-foot fence, it's going to be, it'll be not, it's not transparent. You can't see through it. I couldn't think of the right word. But that way people cannot see the children, and the children can't see out. And it also makes it a little harder for the mischievous folks who might want to try and climb the fence. So the fence itself will be along High Street. It's 75 feet, and it's 55 feet along the northern border within a butter. And as you can see, this is right across the street from the proposed project, and there's a 6-foot fence there. That's at the corner of High and Winter Streets. And if you go to the next, it's the same house and then another house in the neighborhood. There's quite a few with 6-foot fences. We'll be observing the spirit of the, we'll be observing the spirit of the ordinance by permitting a 6-foot fence because it promotes the safety for the children and at the project without adversely impacting the character of the residential neighborhood. There's going to be landscaping, as Aaron indicated, in front of the fence. It will not block traffic. We'll be working with planning on the exact angles or anything that need to be done in connection with that. There'll be no diminishment of property values. And just to give you a little bit better idea, there's actually 3 front yards on this property because we're at 2 corners. So we only we have to pick one to put the children in to play, and so this is the one that we picked. And for reasons due mostly to traffic control, and we can kind of look at that again when we get down to that portion of the presentation. But so there's no diminishment of property values. There's special conditions about the property because it's been there so long. And the proposed use is reasonable. It's to provide a safe and secure playground for the children, and to deny it basically means we wouldn't be able to have a daycare center because we have to have a 6-foot fence for licensing reasons. So, okay, now we can go to parking. There's 3 parking variances we're requesting. This is the existing parking. You back out of the property directly into the street. And that's been done by variance. It's been grandfathered, and it's also been done by variance. There's no striping. There's no handicap spaces. There's parking on the lawn, if you want to go down to the next picture. This is they park on the lawn, and it also shows you how close to the building, and then they back out. So allowing the parking variances are not contrary to the public interest because they're not going to allow the continued uses of the property if we can't have variance. Also want to, we're asking for a big variance. If you look at it, you look at it, it's 53 down to 25. If you look at the 2 uses, the community center and the daycare facility alone, as each use, you would get 53. And you would then look at the thing, and you would, at the requirements, and you would need 3 handicap spaces, and we're asking for 2. So We're confident that the 25 spaces proposed are sufficient because right now there's 20 spaces with the exact same usage and pretty much the exact number of people using the property under the proposed. And so we have 100 years of experience between Chris and Kathy and PCC that 20 spaces has worked, and also on Bradley Street, Chris has experience with a similar kind of operation that works. And yet, to understand how it works, you have to understand the ebb and flow. I don't know how many of you dropped kids off at daycare and had to do this, but the ebb and flow is that between like 7 and 9, between 7 and 9, you have people dropping off their children. And a lot of those spaces that were up at the front, I don't know if you want to go to the next slide. So right there, those spaces that are along the building, the front of the building, those are parallel spaces for the parents to get out, drop their kids off, and go. They're only there for a matter of 10 minutes at most, I think, at least. And then it dies down between like 9 and 2:30. It starts up again about 2:30 to maybe 3. People pick up, and then you have most parents coming, I think, between 4 and 5. After that, except for those kind of periods of time, there's no need for parking except for the staff. So if you want to go to the next one, the next slide, please. So I want to compare what's existing and proposed. Under the PCC, they had 20 spaces. We're proposing 25. The number of children was 44. We're expecting 46. The after-school kids, 35. We're expecting 45. And we have 14 staff, whereas PCC had 16. We are not going to be doing the summer camp. It will be done at another location, and so there will be no staff. So during the summer, in particular, there'll be a substantial drop in the activity that's been there for the past 30 years or so. And the community programming is usually done when there's a low parking demand, so the library is usually going to be, they don't know exactly when they're going to be open and closed, but it's usually like 9 to 1. It's 3 days a week. One of the days will be on the weekend when the child care facility is not used. And I think that would be. So the location, I think Aaron covered this. The location of the parking is in one of 3 front yards of the property. And under strict interpretation of the ordinance, the only permitted location would be on the northern boundary of the property, which is essentially the back, and it abuts residential properties. So and I'll let Aaron speak to this if you want more information, if we tried various ways to make the driveway work in the only place under the ordinance we could put it, but we couldn't make it work. And mostly because we get more parking and a better traffic flow by using this design. The other designs would have put the dumpster right on the street, on Dolphin Street. And it also would have created a problem in egressing where Winter Street, and Winter Street's the street that comes in from the left, right there. So it would have created another need for another variance because we would be too close to Winter Street. Right now, we're not. So this is the best that is possible on the site. And believe me, we went through a lot of iterations. The variances do substantial justice because, as noted already, I feel like I have the same song, same verse, but the value of the community center and the child care to the neighborhood and the city over the past 70 years outweighs any possible gain by denying the variances. Furthermore, the variances are consistent with the site's past uses and the historic parking relief that has been granted by this board in the past. There's not any negative impact on the value of the surrounding properties, and it is also consistent, as I just mentioned, with the parking relief that's been granted for the site by the board. There's no fair and substantial relationship between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the special application of that provision to the property. Again, because it's been there for 70 years, it's not adversely affected the value of the property during that time, and there's no evidence that it would change in that respect. We do note that without the community center that we added to the project when the city approached us, Boys and Girls Club would only need 30 spaces for the child care facility, so we would be 5 short. The project also, and I think Aaron mentioned this, we are anticipating or hoping that we're going to get 10 additional parallel spots on Dolphin Street in the reconstruction. So it's a reasonable use for the facility. We obviously need parking, and it doesn't adversely affect anything that's there. I'm going to have to summarize what Aaron talked about for the 65% lot coverage. Just it's in the application, but it's the same reasoning. You know, it's the best that we can do with the facility. It's improving it. There's going to be no substantial loss to the community and the property values, and it's reasonable. And without it, we could not continue the use of this facility that has been there for 30 to 70 years. So I don't know, Aaron, if I left anything out that you wanted.
No, the only, sorry, let me take this. Sorry, the only thing I was going to mention about the parking in the front yard was to elaborate on what I had explained. We looked at moving the building forward and putting the park in the back. Some challenges we had, as you can see, the driveway winds through, so that gives us length. It gives us a place to have the dumpster in a screened location, adequately accessible by the truck, gives us 2 spaces for the van, and then gives us sort of this active drop-off, and it gives us more parking. If the driveway were to go straight through, we lose the ability for a queue, and we do have less parking spaces. The other thing that was sort of detrimental about that layout is it did one of 2 things. If we kept the entrances near the parking, it put the back of our building to the neighborhood, and we really didn't like that look and feel. We want the aesthetics of the front, the invitingness to be out front. And then the other thing was wayfinding. If we put, especially where we have 2 uses, if we had the doors in the back, it really became difficult for us to look at it and say, people are easily going to know where to go. And then those additional Dolphin Street parking spaces are also not as conveniently accessible to the use. So this orientation, we think, is considerate of the neighbors to the north. We recognize there is a neighbor across Dolphin Street who we've spoken with, and that's why we've spent a great deal of planning as to how we can provide a buffer there. So we feel like it balances both the wayfinding and how the building addresses the neighborhood. We really felt strongly we didn't want to put the back of the building to the neighborhood, especially where we have 3 frontages, and also the wayfinding.
Yep, and so this is what we're proposing, and the next slide is that's who we're proposing it for. So happy to answer any questions or comments, or yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that you can't meet the special exception criteria for the uses now that the lots have been merged. Which of them can't you meet?
It's the 6-foot fence one. It's the fence, right?
No, I believe it's also, they're not located on Imperial or Collector Road.
Oh, that's
okay.
it. That's what it was. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I think that's the big one.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. And is there an existing fence?
I'm sorry, what?
Is there an existing 6-foot fence?
No, it's not. It's various wire fences are 4 feet. I don't know.
Actually, is a small 6-foot section of fence that they just installed.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Right before we merged.
Okay. All right.
So you're tearing down all the existing structure. Is the new structure, I don't need to the exact, but is it roughly this comparable size to the total size of the existing structures? Or it's bigger?
It's bigger, and then also the addition of the community room, so it's bigger, yes. and it's all one story. A couple of the former residential buildings that were converted are 2-story. The building's all 1 story, but it is larger.
You're installing a sidewalk, is that what you said?
We are. So there's a couple of sidewalks. There's a sidewalk along the building. There's a sidewalk along Dolphin Street, and then there's pedestrian connectivity to both.
Are you required to do the sidewalk or not?
Yes.
You are required, okay.
Yes.
So, with regard to the parking, I saw that there's no handicap spaces today, but I didn't see any reason why you can't have 3 as it's required. There's nothing from your presentation and nothing in the record.
No, I think what we were thinking is that the ADA spaces are usually determined based on the number of parking spaces in the parking lot. So a lot with 50 or fewer would have 2, so that's how it's laid out. The ordinance requires 53, we're providing the 25. So we're providing more, or what is required for the number of parking spaces that are provided. That was our methodology.
Okay. Would have been helpful if that had been part of the presentation.
That's my bad, sorry.
Okay, that's boring lawyer stuff and
Yeah, and Chris has just pointed out to me that in fact there is going to be a summer program at the facility, so that was my misunderstanding. So I don't know if you want to elaborate any on that, or just,
No, I mean, we're gonna have a space there for the school-age kids during the school year.
So what's the staffing for that? Because you have to add that to the numbers that we saw for the daycare.
Pardon?
What's the staffing for the summer camp?
It'll actually be the same as it is during the school year. It's 1:15 for a ratio. Now, if they go on a trip, it is 1:8. So there might be some, it depends on how many trips we decide to take and schedule and how we schedule those. But of course, we have other service sites and other locations, so we might shift some staff around. It wouldn't all be at this location 5 days a week. But I think we just wanted to be clear that there will be some sort of summer day camp. It's not going to meet the total demand, so chances are we're also going to be in one of the elementary schools as well, which I believe is also what they've historically done.
So during the summer, is it a camp plus daycare, or is it no daycare?
Yeah, that's
just
correct, but
camp?
it would be the same number of kids that would be there during the school year.
It would be
is,
46. I don't know
it's
if you-
licensed for a certain number regardless of what the
Okay, so it's
program
46
is.
year-round.
Correct.
So you got 14 staff members for daycare, then you could have how many for the summer camp? Because that means you're really doubling your staffing, pretty much. during the
Well,
summer.
we're going to have staff there. There would be 3 staff there for the school year. And I suppose you could say you would double that for, 6 for the summer if we were taking trips 5 days a week. Which we haven't for many years now just because of the expense. And, summer camp tends to be younger kids that they just don't have the endurance to go out 5 days a week, and the parents don't want them exhausted on the weekends, to be honest. So we've kind of curtailed that for budget and, parent satisfaction reasons.
Wouldn't you love exhausted kids on the
Yeah,
weekend?
it depends on the parent.
Any additional questions? Thank you very much.
thank you.
Is there anyone who'd like to be heard in favor of this appeal? Is there anyone who'd like to be heard in opposition to this appeal? Please come forward. Swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name for the record, please.
My name is Peter Roth, and I'm here with my wife Elizabeth Stark.
Right, let me just, you also introduced a letter.
I did. I dropped the letter off.
Rather than my reading the letter into the record, I assume you're going to do that for us
Oh,
tonight.
I wasn't going to do that.
Are you going to summarize what you have in your letter?
Pretty much,
Right,
yes.
Very good. Proceed.
Thank you. My wife and I purchased our home on Winter Street 10 years ago, and we've lived alongside the Pentacle Community Center throughout that time, and the PCC has been generally a very good neighbor. There was one time when we discovered that the
Best Way Services were picking up trash at 6 in the morning on the street, and so I sent an email to the executive director, and that changed. So they've been a good neighbor, and I'm actually, I was torn in terms of how I made my presentation and my letter to you in terms of whether to support it or to oppose it. But there are some things about the project that I don't really like, and that I don't think are consistent with the neighborhood that the PCC is in. And if you looked at the pictures that were shown to you of the PCC, other than there's sort of a concrete block building, which I've never been inside of, but it's I think perhaps the original community center. And it's where Michelle Obama came and gave a speech about child nutrition and exercise and stuff. And behind that building, there's a large green area, and the kids play in that green area. They spend a lot of time out there during the day, and you can hear them laughing and screaming at each other. It's an amazing amount of joyful noise that they make, and it's astonishing how kids can screech so much, and it's clear that they're having fun. There are no screeches of anguish or upset. It was a really well-run program, people doing a great job, and a lot of happy kids went through there. What you can see, though, is that the two buildings on High Street are old New Englander type houses, and there's a two-car garage in the middle there, and you can see the van parked there between the two buildings. There used to be two of them there, and they disappeared over the summer. It's unusual for the vans to be parked on the lawn. Usually they're parked right there. So it's a little bit of a not totally true that they park the vans on the lawn. I've seen them parked on the lawn, but generally they're in that parking lot there, and that's where the dumpsters are, behind a little fence. But the character of the neighborhood is all residential. There are old New Englander houses. There's some bungalows over on Community Drive, some ranch houses. There's no industrial use here. There's no institutional use here. You get down to the Merrimack Valley High School, there's a big school there with a lot of really bright lights and parking and everything. It's kind of obnoxious. And then further down, along where there used to be the industrial area, where there's the tannery, and there's an old Rivco factory, but all that stuff's on the periphery. This facility is going right in the middle of just a residential neighborhood. So in our letter, what I focused on was not on sort of the negatives of the scope of the facility or its placement. There were two things that really sort of struck me. One, or several things, but one, you're taking what is really a nice green space in there and essentially pushing a big building into it so they can have a parking lot. And so there'll be a parking lot on Dolphin Street. When it was originally proposed to us back in March, there wasn't really much by way of landscaping proposed for it or buffer zones or anything. So it was like, okay, there's going to be a lot of pavement there that we're going to look at and walk past and live with. And it seems like they've maybe improved that plan a little bit, that they've put some landscaping into the mix. But right now, if you look at pictures 4 and 5,
Sorry, hold on. You mean in these pictures, or?
There are pictures, there was figure 4 and 5. There was a fence, and I'm not sure which. There. So you can see there's a little peaked roof behind the fence there. That's my house. That's where we live. And that fence is our neighbor's pool. She's got a swimming pool in there. She's 90-something years old. And so that's her swimming pool fence. But you can see that we have a lot of our house looks towards the Pentacle Community Center. And right now, it's not in great shape. Definitely needs paint, needs repair. It's kind of ugly. But what I was concerned about was now the new proposal is that we're going to look at pavement, and we're going to look at what looks like a light industrial facility. The picture that we were showed back in March, showed what looks like, a light industrial or institutional type building with a flat roof, very little by way of architectural detail. Nothing about this facility is consistent with anything else in the neighborhood. And then the pictures that we were showed today, it seems like they've gone from bad to worse. And they've put like,
I'm looking, there we go. This one?
thank you. There's now a big structure on the roof that wasn't in the original pictures the rendering that we were showed. And I don't know what that's for, but we were concerned that this building doesn't look like anything else in the neighborhood, doesn't look like what the Pentacle Community Center looks like now, and it's going to be hard to look at all the time. It's going to impact the quality of life and our being able to enjoy, walking around the neighborhood, looking at what's out there. The parking lot, one of the things that we brought up at the meeting in March was, why do you need such a big parking lot? The uses of the facility don't require that much parking. And what I didn't realize, and it was explained to me tonight and in the application, is that along Dolphin Street there are 20 parking spaces. And it's kind of a ragtag bunch of broken asphalt and concrete and stuff. And it doesn't, at one point I compared it to, I've seen nicer looking truck lots, warehouses in New Jersey. But that could definitely be improved, and you could put parking spaces in there like they are now without having to push the building back up against the neighbors' yards and without creating another big asphalt parking space or parking lot. The use there along Dolphin Street is not, from my experience, is not especially bad. As was said, there's traffic in the morning, there's traffic in the afternoon. Most of the time it's very quiet and there's very few cars there. So it strikes us that you don't really need to build a parking lot in the front yard of this building. We've been somewhat comforted, I guess is maybe the wrong word, but made a little happier by the idea that they're going to have some landscaping and stuff and hopefully create some buffer to it. And then again, along the fence that they want to build for the child play area. There was a statement made, I believe, by the engineering folks about lighting and robust landscaping. And among the conditions that I suggested in our letter is that those be conditions to granting the variance, that there be robust landscaping and that there be the appropriate lighting. Right now, you look over there and it's dark. It's just dark. They have a motion-activated light behind one of the buildings, and sometimes when the flag flaps, it makes the light go on and off. Or if kids go in the area back there, it comes on. But for the most part, it's just dark there, and it's nice that it's dark there. The other thing that I was concerned about is the flat roof was going to have on it rooftop utilities like air conditioners or air handlers or ventilation systems that were going to be noisy, and that those systems would operate 24/7 all year long. And in the wintertime, it's not such a problem because all our windows are closed, you can't hear much. But in the summertime, those noises carry right into most of the rooms of our house. Noises on the street. There's a guy down the street who's got a really noisy muffler, and he goes up and down the street. And there's another kid down the street with a really noisy motorcycle. He goes up and down the street. All that stuff comes right inside the house. But we can also, from a distance, sometimes hear because of the way the property and the whole terrain in the area is sloped. You can hear the wastewater treatment plant down along the Merrimack River, and you can hear cows down there too. It would be really very unpleasant if we had to listen to the air conditioning on that building going on and off all night long, all summer long. And so what I suggested in the letter was that there be a condition imposed requiring them to build appropriate concealment and sound insulating structures for whatever kind of air handling equipment that they had, and that they focus on those things. With respect to the fences, we don't necessarily have really an objection to that, although I think that the idea about there being fences, 6-foot fences all over the neighborhood is a bit overstated. Nylene has her pool fence, and there are fences in backyards. There are 6-foot fences in backyards, no question about it. But the only one right on High Street that I'm aware of is Nilene's pool fence. And so now, what would be, the proposal would do is create a corridor of white vinyl 6-foot fences down High Street. That's gonna be kind of unpleasant. I think that's sometimes known as a dog run, and that's, I think, not desirable to have that. So I don't know what the solution is to that, but it seems to be being handled quite adequately with a 4-foot chain link fence around the play area in the back. So, just to sum up, our main concerns are the building design is not consistent at all with the community and the neighborhood. The landscaping is an important element of making the site fit in a little bit better, and so it should be part of the condition to any variances. And then the lighting on the parking area and on the building, this should not end up looking like Merrimack Valley High School, where you can see it blocks and blocks away. This should be a very demure, quiet, dark place. You know, have them go off at night. Don't just dim them. Turn them off at night. There's no need for it. It's a very safe and quiet neighborhood, despite the kids with the motorcycles and the mufflers. And people like it that way. And so I think, you know, the Pentacle Community Center and the Boys and Girls Club could be a good neighbor for us, as it has been in the past, but there needs to be some improvements to this so that it fits in better. Right now, the fit is not good. That is ugly, and that shouldn't be in the neighborhood. Happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Hall, could you put the map up, please? And then could you show us where you are in relationship to the
map.
project?
Yep. I don't know what your address is, sir.
It's 10 Winter Street. So you see the swimming pool on the other side of High Street?
You're welcome to go up there and point it out to us.
Yeah, this is our 20 Winter Street. This is our house and our driveway.
You're a couple of blocks away.
No, it's,
No, it's
I
right
think
there.
you can see right over the pool. It's maybe 100 feet.
All right.
Direct line of sight from both floors of the house over to the building, these two buildings.
These are the 4 lots that are being combined.
Right. Do we have any questions? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in opposition? Please come up. Just swear to tell truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please state your name.
Lisa Dunn. Hi. Wow, this is intimidating. So I have never been to anything like this before, and perhaps as I'm sitting here, it seems like a lot of my concerns are similar to my neighbor, Peter. And maybe it's a planning board thing and not the zoning board, but when I saw the picture of the building, my biggest concern is this is residential neighborhood. That doesn't seem to fit in. It looks like another Merrimack Valley High School, which is a lovely school, and with very bright lights. And one of the concerns I also had was lighting, and I did email my local representative who gave me lots of information about the light height and stuff, which means nothing to me other than I just want it to be dark. My deck directly overlooks this property. And so when I sit out on my deck, and I have a lovely deck, and I have a lovely pool, and I enjoy the quiet, dark neighborhood, I'm really concerned about looking at this industrial type building with lights and maybe air conditioning systems. I didn't even think of that. And it really, I think, could potentially impact the enjoyment of my house. I don't have a problem with the Boys and Girls Club. I think they do great things. The PCC was a lovely neighbor. I know a lot of people that worked there. I know that childcare is an issue. I'm not saying that it's not, it certainly is. I don't oppose the PCC continuing or the Boys and Girls Club. I just have concerns, I think, about the implementation of it, what it looks like, how it impacts the direct neighbors, because this is a residential neighborhood. Like, through and through, they're all houses. And as far as the fences go, I don't have a problem with a white vinyl fence, but Nylene's fence is her side yard. That is a pool that is in her side yard. And the other fence that was shown is actually my fence, which is also a pool and in my backyard. So just to be clear, I know that we were talking about how it fits in with the neighborhood, but those are in conforming areas. And the other thing I had a question on or an issue with is actually the parking on Dolphin Street. And that's because the busy times for the PCC is also the busy times for those streets because they do go to the high school and the middle school. And I happen to work in those schools, and I've seen the traffic, and it's difficult for the people parked on Dolphin Street dropping off their kids to back out when there's so much traffic coming in and out of people going to the school. There happens to be a residence across the street that also has kids being dropped off in the morning, and so it does get a little congested. And so I would just want to make sure that that is, I guess, thought of, that it does get a little congested there. I would love a sidewalk. I walk my dog there all the time. I'm always in the road as people come around the corner, always taking my life into my own hands. So I think that's it. Thanks. Sorry.
Questions? No? Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in opposition to the bill? Come on up.
It's not really an opposition.
It's okay.
It's just a concern.
By all means. Swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And you are?
Tracy Houston. I am the abutter. Coming here did answer a lot of questions for me. I do have a few concerns, but my children went to PCC. Prior to them having 80, when I bought the house, 83 beside me was a house in the PCC. So when my children went there for 5 years, we just walked out back because there was no fence. And in the past 15 years, there has been the fence. My concern is my location. I'm at 81. So all those 3 buildings need to be torn down. I have an old New Englander. So my concern is whether they tear them down and build something else, or if they're rehabbed by somebody else. They are so close. I don't know what it will do to the structure of my house. My house was built in 1900, probably when 83 was as well. So that's my concern. But the presentation, the pictures that I saw, personally, I love that big white fence. Right now, it's a short chain link fence. I've mowed over Legos, matchboxes. Hey, lady, can I have my ball back? They've been enjoyable being there, but if they're going to add to the program and put that big building back, I think the fence is necessary for, especially being right alongside the road now. If that's where the children are going to be. When they were out back, they didn't need coverage because it was just myself and John, the guy out back. But with the children playing on right that side of the street, I agree with the fence. Those are my little opinions.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Please come forward. Swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And you are?
Melanie Barker. I'm at 102 High Street. I'm not a direct abutter, but am impacted because I am in that vicinity between this facility and the high school and middle school. High Street is one of the 2 major roads going from north to south through the neighborhood. My concern, the building, of course, doesn't, as it's shown now, does not fit in with the aesthetic of the neighborhood at all. We already have the 2 schools that are big industrial brick structures. These are run down, but definitely houses that were part of the neighborhood initially, have been used for a daycare center over the past years, which having a daycare center in the area is definitely a necessity. I do have neighbors who have school-age children and are concerned about what they're going to do after school or for summer programs with their kids. So it definitely would be good to have this facility in the neighborhood. Parking is and has been an issue. High Street is difficult to access coming from the north on the Pentacle Center end of the street. It's kind of a weird little jog off the traffic circle down there to get onto High Street. So a lot of traffic does use Community Drive, including myself, to get home. And Dolphin Street is my cut across to get from Community to High to get home. And in the afternoon, when kids are getting picked up, the cars are definitely backing into the street. You have little kids running around the ends of the cars, somewhat supervised by parents. So it's a safety concern for the kids to have some sort of parking lot. The use of the 65% of the lot for the building cuts down on the lot size that would be available to parking. And just having I can see the value of having a one-way through parking lot coming off of one street next thing to the other, but I'm questioning whether that exit on High Street is the appropriate place for it, or would it be better positioned on Dolphin, where vehicles could then choose to go to either one of the main corridors rather than just High Street. And 25 parking spaces for the lot doesn't seem adequate if you have 14 staff that have to park somewhere too. Where are those staff parking? There is no real guarantee that they're gonna put parking spaces on Dolphin Street. That sounds like a proposed reconstruction of Dolphin, and trying to rely on parking across the way at the park isn't feasible because the park has a lot of activity, a lot of ball games. There are always extra cars parked all the way along the side of Community, like blocks up Community Drive, which hinder the road traffic on that street even further. So and then the community center prior, it's like if it was used for our seniors in the community, I think Pentacle Senior Center used the prior PCC for some of their activities. Parking for those folks while the daycare is in session, how is that going to work? Doesn't seem to be enough. How can you run community center events and the daycare center in the same time frame, and even potentially have the library branch move with the proposal that's in front of us now? And then lighting, of course, still, of course, is an issue too, because I have blackout curtains in my bedroom 3 houses down from the schools, and it's still not enough. So lighting is definitely something that needs to be addressed and followed through on if we're gonna have a facility like this. There are 2-story buildings there now that work for the daycare. Is that anything that can be done on site? That building in today's pictures looks like it could have been a 2-story with the brick, and then the other part may just need an elevator, but it could potentially be done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Code enforcement.
No comments, sir.
Ms. Lane, would you like to come forward and offer any factual rebuttal on testimony that you heard?
I'm going to let Erin address most of the concerns because they were about the design and the use of the space. So I think she can better address those than I can.
So many of the items that we talked about will be fully vetted out through the planning board process, but they have also been considered in the concept plans you see today. So as one of the abutters mentioned, we had a community meeting earlier this year, and so that's why some of the layouts that they saw we hadn't done the landscape design yet, or the elevations hadn't been fully developed. So the landscaping that you're seeing and the architectural elevations, that's the evolution of where we are today. It is a one-story building. The reason the center is elevated is there's a room, sort of a multi-purpose room, that's also a little bit higher, so they could do, gym activities or something like that. And it's not a gymnasium like at the Boys and Girls Club, but it is slightly elevated there. So that's why you see the slightly higher elevation in the center of the building. It is a flat roof. The plan is to have the entire roof covered by solar panels. So there will be ground source heat pumps. So the concern over condensers and things like that will not be relevant here. If something were to change, those certainly would be screened both visually and audially. But right now the plan is to have solar panels and ground source heat pumps, both for the daycare facility as well as potentially for the community center as well. So the Dolphin Street improvements are part of the City of Concord's 2023 capital plan. So the street is being rebuilt regardless of our project, and the city was happy to see the projects going forward at the same time because they really want to close that wide curb cut. So the fact that today the cars back into the street, part of it was grandfathered, part of it was allowed by variance, but it certainly is not the safest route in the city. Was wanting to create just a 2-lane road with parallel parking on one side of the road for safety. That is in the capital budget for 2023. As part of the project, we would be constructing the sidewalk in conjunction with that, and they're being designed together. It will address some of the concerns, I believe, that residents have because it will make it safer. We agree that having cars backing out would make that a very difficult road, especially if it's an important connector between Community Drive and High Street. So I think that people will find that putting the parking on the property and eliminating that backing out into the public streets will create better flow in the neighborhood and will eliminate that traffic congestion that people are experiencing, because it is a dangerous condition to have people backing into the street, especially in a commercial facility. The way that the site flows, so 25 parking spaces we feel is adequate, both for the daycare as well as for the use of the Pentacle Community Center, partly because they'll be non-concurrent, and that's by design. They'd actually kind of married well together without a lot of change to that, but it certainly will be an active collaboration between the two businesses to ensure. But in working with Kathy and others who are longstanding employees of the community center, the 20 parking spaces was enough. We feel that having 25 and having the 10 on the street, which can't be guaranteed but will likely be there for employees. We expect that the parents will be using the parking lot and doing sort of an active drop-off and an active pickup. And, they find the time that works best. People don't all want to get there if there's 20 cars, so it kind of naturally attenuates out over that period. So we're comfortable that the number of parking spaces we're providing is adequate. Share the neighbors' sensitivity that absolutely landscaping and screening is vitally important. We're working with a wonderful landscape architect firm out of Hopkinton. We've already developed plans. We're meeting with planning. I think we certainly can meet with folks about that, but screening and landscaping is really important, as is the lighting. We will abide by the city's ordinance. They'll have a maximum height. They'll be fully downcast. They won't cast off the property. And then I think the idea of setting timers so that the lights are off when they don't need to be on, so they're just on, if there's a community event after hours in the evening, is certainly something that we're planning on, and we can certainly talk to the neighbors about it, and we'll all get fully vetted at the planning board process. The buildings are going to be demolished. The city has an ordinance. We will make sure that those don't disrupt the neighborhood.
They are being demolished probably this fall. They're in process because there's concern of vandalism and also people going inside and maybe living there. It's like a nuisance waiting to happen for kids, especially in the neighborhood. So that is going to happen. And to address the concerns about the existing buildings, initially the Boys and Girls Club looked at saving those 2 homes, and they had professionals come in and look at them, and the cost of renovating them is much more expensive than building it, and it just also doesn't really work with the combination with the community center and a daycare center. So this is a much more efficient way of doing things, and but that was looked at, just so that you know.
Questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that, I'll declare the hearing closed. All right. How do we want to handle this? Do we want to look at each item separately, or do we want to combine, let's say, 1 and 2? 3 is a separate item, 4 is a separate item, 5, 6, and 7 is one item. Does that work?
Makes sense to me, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
so the use items first.
let's do that. Let's do 1 and 2 first.
I'll move to approve 1 and 2.
Second.
You're still gonna make me do all the work, aren't you?
No.
Discussion.
I think that there's no material change in the use, at least on the lot where the PCC is now. The change in use is primarily where in my view, where the residential properties were. So the combination of lots seem to envision this use anyway. And so I think it's consistent with the current activity on the property.
I think it's
Second on that?
Wait, sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm having a hard time. I think it's consistent, but it's gonna be a new lot, so we have to look at it. They're allowed to continue doing it because of their existing use, but now that it's an entirely new lot, I don't really see any special conditions. There's nothing really unique about the lot, or the lot. And there's nothing, there's obviously nothing unique about the structures. The structures are being demolished.
So it's a self-created hardship, is it? Not quite.
I'm not really seeing any hardship. They just want to continue which is a great use. I just think they're just, we have to look at it like it's a new lot. I just have a hard time seeing the
Was it
hardship.
3 of the 4 current lots are used for childcare?
I think 1's the community center and 2 are childcare. I would be inclined to grant the use variances. I think the hardship is the past use of the property, which, but for the merger, would be allowed to continue. I think that the fact that they're allowed by special exception in the district does demonstrate that they're reasonable uses for the district if certain conditions are met, and if the only condition that can't be met is the location on a certain type of road.
I'll verify that. For
Okay.
you guys.
I think it's reasonable. I don't think it's going to change the character of the neighborhood. I understand the neighbors' concerns about the aesthetics, the landscaping, the lighting, but that doesn't relate to the use. That relates to the building, and that will all get flushed out at the planning board. I think substantial justice is done, because I think there's a benefit not only to the owner, but to the community of keeping these uses there, and I don't think it will diminish surrounding property values for the uses.
Any other comments? Andrew?
No.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
Nay.
1 and 2 pass 4-1. Item 3 is permitting lot coverage of 65% where maximum 50% is allowed.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second that.
Discussion.
Yeah, I think consistent with what the action we just took to approve the change in the use, it's consistent with that and almost necessitates it in order for the proper use of a child care center, community center.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 4 to 1. Item 4, 6-foot fence.
I move to approve.
Second.
Again, consistent with our previous actions on the use, the fact that the fence is required as a part of the licensing for childcare center suggests that it's an appropriate step that we would have to take.
I think it's also important to note that there are 3 front yards on this property, so
Which makes it
pretty
two.
much no matter where they put a fence, they're gonna need a variance.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 4 to 1. 5, 6, and 7. 25 parking spaces where 53 are required, 2 handicap parking spaces where 3 are required, and to allow off-street parking in a front yard of a residential district where such parking is not permitted.
I'll move to approve 5, 6, and 7.
Second.
And just before we get into it, I should say, some of the comments by the Ross Stark letter, I don't want to suggest that we're indifferent to those, but most of them are items that will be taken up by the planning board, and we can't do a lot about them this evening. So I didn't want to be dismissive of that testimony. I think I was, with regard to item 5, I think consistent with actions that zoning board has taken in other cases, the more we understand about the actual use, the more lenient we can be on the required parking. So I think reducing the number of parking spaces is consistent with the use of what was described to us. With regard to the handicapped, I think I would have preferred to have it included in the record and we didn't have to drag it out of them. But again, if we're dropping it down to 25 spaces, the ratio to handicap spaces is consistent with that action. And then finally, the off-street parking, I think is to the betterment of first of all, because there's so many front yards, I think we'd have to grant it somehow anyway. But I think the fact that it's being done in conjunction with improvements the city's making to Dolphin Street suggests it's all going to work out fine.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 4 to 1. You're all set. All right, 4 more cases. All right. I think we're gonna go beyond 10 o'clock.
Let's do more ones.
Hmm?
They've waited.
Yeah, we're gonna keep going.
Yeah, I'm
Because
fine.
I made no mention in the beginning that we'd have.
Yeah,
a
I'm
case.
fine pushing through, just because otherwise we'll just do the same thing next week, next month.
All right, our next case tonight is case 50-22, 14 Fellow Street, RS Single Family Residential District. Applicant wishes to modify a portion of their existing single-family dwelling. Okay, folks, can we have the discussion outside, please?
I didn't mean to be pushy, but
Hold on, I gotta finish this. Applicant wishes to modify a portion of their existing single-family dwelling on the non-conforming lot to provide an attached second dwelling unit for a caretaker and is requesting variances to Article 2842J, Table of Principal Uses, Use A2 to allow two-family dwelling on a lot where such use is not permitted, and Article 2852 duplex or two-family dwelling to allow two-family dwelling on a lot with an area of 10,018.8 square feet where 18,750 square feet is required. We swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please state your name.
Nancy Stewart, I live in Pembroke, New Hampshire. I was just gonna say thank you to Mr. Hall too, and thank you for your time. I'm not on the clock, so this will be brief. My sister Jane Sullivan has lived at 14 Fellow Street since it was built in 1960. We're asking for 2 variances to convert a single-family home into a two-family with a main house and a 606-square-foot 3-room apartment for a caregiver. The first variance is to Article 28-2-4K from the Table of Uses to permit a 2-unit home in an RS zone. Without changing the footprint, we want to convert the attached garage, the connecting L, and an unenclosed porch into a one-bedroom apartment. As is, the driveway is adequate for 4 average-sized cars, and Jane doesn't drive. As far as the neighborhood goes, this won't change the feel of it at all. There are 2 other homes in the neighborhood with second units in them. There are also people aging at home creatively, like one neighbor who's been there since 1961 and has family staying with him these past few years. It's that kind of a neighborhood because it's safe, it's close to services, it's flat for walking, and it's very friendly. The neighborhood was designed with some small homes like our great aunts across the street, 2-bedroom ranches on the smallest lots, while other homes like ours, capes with 3 to 4 bedrooms, were built on the larger lots. There has always been something for everyone on that sleepy elbow. While taking measurements outside Jane's house, my husband and I spoke to 3 of Jane's neighbors. They came over, what's going on, that's the kind of neighborhood it is. And they were all very encouraging and thought it was a great idea. The only change to the looks of the property will be 2 back doors instead of 1, a large window where the old garage door is, and an ADA-designed ramp. The latest home to sell, Kitty Corner on Bow Street, sold for $410,000. The neighbors will be pleased, I think, to see the visual improvements we'll be making to an addition built in the early 1970s. Jane plans to live there to a ripe old age, and having a caregiver there will help ensure that. Jane has cerebral palsy, and she needs some help. For the price of 6 months in an assisted living facility, Jane can stay home in a safe environment, plus earn rent to pay for the improvements. Finding ways to improve affordable housing for caregivers that also allows us to age at home seems like a great idea, especially in this housing shortage environment. The second variance is to Article 2852 to allow a 2-family home on a lot with less than 18,750 square feet. Jane has 10,018. Again, there will be no changes at all to the footprint or the roof line. 1 walkway around to the back of the apartment will be paved, and an aesthetic ramp will be constructed on the front of the house. 2 entry doors instead of 1, and 1 window instead of a garage door, that's it. And we have a safe place for Jane to continue to live, and extra help right inside the new door. It'll be a huge inconvenience for Jane to move from a childhood home, and finding, frankly, a well-suited house on 18,750 square feet seems unlikely. Aging in place in a safe neighborhood is something to strive for. Jane deserves to remain where she is. It's not a duplex, it's not an apartment building, it's a home with an attached garage converted into living space. This neighborhood has always been intended for all kinds of households, with fellow street lot sizes ranging in size from 7,840 to 14,800 feet, plus 1 extra large one at the corner of the elbow. There's something for everyone there. Thank you for your time.
David, why isn't this an ADU?
Because it does not meet the special exception requirements, which I'm looking up now, and I believe it was the lot size that it didn't require,
Okay.
didn't meet.
And I think we wrestled with this once. We can't grant a variance for a
Special exception
section.
criteria, correct, which is why she's going from 2 units on 1 lot.
But looking at this, I think this is relatively new, the 674-33-5, for a disabled person, we can grant it time limited, right?
Well, that's for like a ramp or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're referring to there. So we cannot restrict, right, construction or accessibility needs. They wouldn't need a variance for the setback requirements for that.
Well, they would need a variance, but they wouldn't need to show hardship.
They would need a variance, and it says that we can identify the duration of time the variance would be needed to survive.
But if they're gonna construct a whole new unit, then they'd have to take it out when she moves out?
That's how I understood it. That's why we're going for not the special exception. 'Cause you
But you did fill out the second piece of this for 674-33-5.
Actually, most people have filled that out tonight.
they just filled
I
that
don't
out.
think they understand. They
If you
don't
give
have
me
to.
a form, I fill it out.
And will this be the principal place of residence for the caretaker?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Is the caretaker a family member, or you don't know yet?
Well, we have a close family friend who would love it. And they're very, it seems like it would be perfect. And people are just getting priced out. And that really was what my sister was concerned about. She's like, I've got all this space. I don't have a car. I just, she's like, I could make that into an apartment. We talked to friends, and there was Ruth, and so.
So, will the two units be connected?
Only, no. If
Be
it
a
was gonna
door, a
be an
locked door
ADU, it needed a door, but it, my sister uses a walker, and it gets tight. So there's a door that comes out here, a window, and the other door. So they're 3 feet apart.
It's not a shared kitchen or?
No, 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 it would be separate for my sister.
But, so it'd be, does she need an on-site caretaker to remain living there as she ages? Is that the idea?
As of right now, my husband and I are there 5-6 days a week. She can't take her trash out, you know.
So she needs someone on
She's got
site.
a walker already, so.
Right.
And with COVID, she didn't feel comfortable hiring people to come in. So Ruth is our go-to when we go out to Oregon to bury Gary's mom last week, and things, she takes care of her. Just, it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's such a nice neighborhood.
I'm just showing some plans that she's provided, if you want me to scan through some of the, oh, you have these.
Yeah, we have those.
So-
All drawn to scale.
Any further questions?
And have we confirmed that the special exception can't be granted because of the minimum lot size, and that's it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you very much. All right. Is there anyone who'd like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward. Swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do. I'm William Norton. I live at 11 Fellow Street, 3 doors down from the subject property.
I'm sorry, your first name?
William Norton.
What would you like us to know, Mr. Norton?
I think this is a excellent application and will not impact the neighborhood in any negative way. There are there are actually 4 units over on Rockingham Street. The new zoning draft ordinance anticipates ADUs in all residential districts. It's a matter of timing, and given the circumstances of the resident, it's very appropriate to grant this variance.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone who'd like to speak in opposition to this application? Please step forward. Do we swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And you are?
And pardon my mask. I am an abutting neighbor.
And your name?
My name is Susan Dooley. I too grew up in the house that abuts this property.
What's your number?
We're 73 Bow. So if you look at that house and you follow it, let's see, above it, just above it where the marker is, that's where I am. And that house, my parents bought in 1961, and my parents have lived there with my sister and I, and then I moved back in as my parents got older to help with my parents growing old, and I stay in my old bedroom. I am not necessarily objecting to this. What I'm wondering about is, I don't know the details of how this changes the configuration of the house. I haven't seen any design or drawing. I don't know how it affects potentially foot traffic. It sounds to me like if the footprint is not going to be affected, if the roof line is staying the same, and it's just a building over a garage to accommodate a caretaker, that all makes a lot of sense to me, practically and all. We have a house just beyond us where they did that above the garage, and it's like an in-law apartment. I think it's effectively like a 2-room with a bathroom. And they maintain the same footprint. And they had the entrance to that place just at the side of the garage. I'm curious about the walkway, the entrances, if they're gonna go around the back side of the house. My big question is, what happens down the road, does this get sold as two dwellings, a duplex? I would object to that, because I think the neighborhood has, I think it would change the essential character of the neighborhood. We have no duplexes in that neighborhood. It's been a single-family home neighborhood, and there have been, you know, extra, maybe family members moving in and out to help, which makes a lot of sense to me. But I do think it would, I think that it changes the character of the neighborhood. I don't know whether property values would diminish if it sets the stage for this happening and duplexes going in. And then you get the potential for increased traffic and noise, et cetera. So I don't know how to answer that question, and I don't know whether that's a question that, I don't know how that works.
We can address that with conditions of approval.
So I would say, I have no complaint about it. I will talk to the owners to get more information about the layout. I would like to have known that before I came here tonight, because I don't know the details. In spirit, I understand this. I know the family, I know Jane and her circumstances, and I had an uncle who had cerebral palsy. I know people need help, and I think if you have the space in your house and somebody comes in to help, my feeling generally is that's your business. And if you can construct something within the house that allows somebody to have some independence in a unit, but also be there to help somebody, I think that's fine. If you're in the process of moving it into a two-family dwelling and everything's separate, and you know, the question of, the big question for me is it changing the character of the neighborhood if it becomes a duplex? And that's where I would say, no, I don't support that. So,
Thank you.
I'm trying to parse out what I'm in favor of and the point at which I feel it's not a favorable proposal. So do you have any questions for what I'm trying to express?
No.
Okay, and my father's 103, almost 103, living in that house behind him, so I'm very interested in conserving his welfare. So,
He couldn't make it
thank you
tonight?
very much for your time.
He couldn't make it?
No, in fact, he's not well right now, but
Oh.
he's almost made it to 103,
Oh.
so we had hoped to be able to celebrate his birthday on October 3rd.
Ooh,
So we shall see.
Yeah, thank you.
But thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in favor or in opposition? I do have a letter here from Janet Stickler, 8 Fellow Street. She couldn't be here tonight, and she is opposed to granting the variances. The proposal lacks nearly half the land requirements needed to meet requirements. A two-family dwelling would change the character of the neighborhood. It also presents future problems if both units were occupied by families with children. It sets dangerous precedent to both articles now and in the future. The south end neighborhood with single-family zoning are particularly favorable in the real estate marketplace. I feel granting variances to their zoning presents a possible threat to that. Code enforcement.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Declare the hearing closed and opening it up for discussion.
I will move that we approve the variance with the following conditions. 1, the owner shall occupy one of the units. 2, the ADU or the second unit shall be a permanent place of residence. And 3, the second unit shall not be converted to a condominium or conveyed separately from the main unit.
I'll second that.
I think that allowing an ADU would be allowed by special exception if the lot were big enough, so I think the use is reasonable. Allowing this conversion within the existing dwelling is not going to change the character of the neighborhood at all. Substantial justice is done because someone will be permitted to remain in their house with the caretaker they need. There will be no diminution of surrounding property values because, again, there are no external changes. And the hardship is that the lot is too small to allow this by special exception.
Very good. Was that seconded?
Jim seconded.
Yeah, I seconded.
Any discussion?
What's your feeling about section 5? 'Cause it seems to fit to me, and that way we could time limit the duration based on the current owner living there, since she needs, the testimony's been that she will need a on-site resident to continue to live there.
My personal feeling on that is that requiring the second unit to be removed when she leaves the residence is just too big of a burden to ask for. The place I normally see those variances are ramps that don't meet the front setback, and those are easy enough to take off when the person moves out, but I don't think converting to a whole second unit will be easy to undo at a later point. Plus, she has hardship, so I don't think she needs it.
Hardship based on her circumstances?
Hardship based on the size of the lot.
Size of the lot, okay. So the hardship is that the lot, it meets all the requirements of ADU except for the size of the lot, which is, okay.
You good?
Yeah.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion is approved. All right, our next case, actually, it's the next two cases because by the same applicant, they involve two abutting properties. I'll read them both into the record, and then we can decide how we want to handle them. Next two cases are 52-22 12 Tohoto Street, RN Neighborhood Residential District. Applicant wishes to execute a lot line adjustment with adjoining property at 11 Summit Street and then build a 14-foot by 24-foot garage on the revised subject property and request variances to Article 2841H, Table of Dimensional Requirements, to permit a structure to be located to within 2 feet of the northerly side property line and 2 feet to the southerly side property line where a 10-foot setback is required. And Article 2841H, Table of Dimensional Requirements, to permit a structure to be located to within 4 feet to the easterly rear property line where a 25-foot setback is required. And finally, Article 287-7G2, setbacks from lot lines to allow the existing driveway located within 5 feet of the northerly side property line to remain on the revised subject property. In conjunction with that, we have separate variance request for 11 Summit Street, RN Neighborhood Residential District. Applicant wishes to execute a lot line adjustment with adjoining property at 12 Tohoto Street and requires variances to 1 Article 28.8.1, purpose and applicability to allow modification to a lot which resulted in an increase in nonconformity by reducing the lot size by 324 square feet from 5120 square feet to 4796 square feet, and Article 2841H, Table of Dimensional Requirements, to place a lot line creating a 2-foot rear yard setback where 25-foot setback is required. Mr. Graffair. Do we swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And state your name for the record, please.
My name is, excuse me, my name is Michael Gaffer, and I reside at 12 Tohoto Street in Concord.
What would you like us to know?
You anticipated, I think, my first request, which is that you consolidate the hearing for both 52 and 53. It's all of a piece. You rattled off a whole bunch of variances, but what it comes down to is I'd like to build a garage on my property, since I own both of these parcels, and I want it to be within 2 feet of the side neighbor, only affecting the neighbor at 93 School Street. So in a nutshell, that's what I'm looking for, and I'd like to consolidate the hearing so I don't have to go through each one of the items, but either I'll get the variance to build the garage or I won't. But it's not, if I don't get all of those variances, I can't build a garage. Okay. The first thing I want to do, I've submitted a package, which I think you all have, and what I'm going to ask you to do, please, is to go to the picture. And if you would please, and I'm working on the one that's marked 12 Tohoto, if you would please tear that picture out and flip it 180 degrees so that it's consistent with everything else in there, so that Tohoto Street is at the bottom and Summit Street is at the top. So every other drawing that you have in here, every other tax map is oriented the same way. I'm sorry I didn't do it right the first time. Okay. If you look at that photo that I just had you flip around, you'll notice that attached to it, there's a little tab. and that's the garage that I want to build. It's to scale, it's right where I want to build it, and you can see that it crosses the property line between the two houses that I own. I think to understand what I want to do here, you need a little bit of the history, and I'll be as brief as I can. The house at 11 Summit Street in the early 1900s was converted from a federal-style center entrance house where you walk in, you go upstairs, you got a living room on one side, dining room on the other side. It was converted by punching out the living room and the dining room and making those two areas garages. The reason I know that happened 100 years ago is because my garages, the garages in that house, both have fancy plaster ceilings with medallions in them, and people don't do that in garages. Okay, and then what happened in that house was an upstairs apartment was created. So you come in the center entrance, go upstairs, and the apartment is upstairs, and the two garages are downstairs. Jump forward to 1960s. Both of those properties, both 11 Summit and 12 Tohoto, came into the ownership of the Kiblings, Harvey and Mary Kibling. In 1977, the Kiblings sold me and my wife the Tohoto Street property, and they stayed in the Summit Street property, and I was deeded a right-of-way to cross the Summit Street property from Summit Street so that I could access 12 Tohoto Street from the rear. That right-of-way has been in continuous use as my driveway for 45 years. In addition to that, the Kiblings kindly said, why don't you use one of the garages? We had no written agreement. They just said I could use the garage. So I've had the use of a garage for 45 years, but not in my house. So jump forward to 1980s. If you look on the map, you'll see next to my little tab, it's hard to make it out, but there is in fact a garage that's been built right on the property line at 93 School Street. It's over just to the left of the garage that I want to build. That house was built in the 1980s. I cooperated in that. I agreed that they could build it 2 feet from the property line, understanding that it's a tight neighborhood, and it's 2 feet from the sideline and also 2 feet from the rear line. And as I said, I participated in that. I believe that there was a hearing before this board in the 1980s. Jump forward to 2022. Mrs. Kibling died at 101. We've got a lot of old people in this coming before the board today. She died at 101, and I was able to purchase the property from her. So now that's the way I've come into ownership of both properties. And as I said, the only thing that affects anybody else's property here is the 2-foot setback from the side property line where I want to put the garage. Anything else that's affected, all these other variances from setbacks and coverage, all of that applies only to my properties. The only other property that's affected is a little bitty corner of the 95 School Street and the garage, where the garage is now, and the next property next to them as well. What I want to do is have a garage that's 2 feet from the property line so that there'll be 4 feet between the garages. And I want that garage to be able to serve and be taxed to 12 Tohoto Street. That's why I need the lot line adjustment to connect the little bit that I'm going to chop off the back of 11th Summit and add it to 12 Tohoto. So the tax people will be happy. They won't have to figure out how to tax a garage that goes across a property line, because with the property line changed, the whole garage will be part of 12 Tohoto Street. Okay, that's what I want to do. I think one other thing that I need to go into, and I'll try to be brief, is the character of the neighborhood, because the character of the neighborhood is what establishes and highlights the hardships resulting from the strict application of the dimensional requirements that are in the zoning ordinance. And when I talk about neighborhood, what I'm talking about for the neighborhood, if you look at the next page, you'll see a copy of the tax map. And what I'm talking about as a neighborhood is that particular block of Summit Street, that 11 Summit Street is on. And the houses on the east side of Summit Street all front on Merrimack Street. There isn't a single house that fronts on Summit Street that also fronts on Merrimack Street. And every one of those houses in that block that front on Merrimack Street have a garage on Summit Street that's probably non-conforming, being too close together and too close to the rear property line. The other part of the neighborhood that I include in the neighborhood is the houses that are on Tohoto Street. It's virtually the same situation on Tohoto Street. Every house on that side of Tohoto Street, on the east side of Tohoto Street, every one of those houses has a front on Tohoto Street, and the garage is on Summit Street. The only exception to that is my house at 12 Tohoto Street. I'm the only one that doesn't go all the way through, although now I do because I own both properties. Okay. The character of the neighborhood. All of these houses in this neighborhood are old. None of them were built later than the very early 1900s. My house at 12 Tohoto Street dates to 1858. They're all old houses, and they're all large houses. Most of them probably exceed the maximum coverage on the lots because they're big houses and the lots aren't all that big. All the garages that are on Summit Street are non-conforming as to setback requirements. So my asking for a non-conforming use here wouldn't alter the character of the neighborhood one bit. On the Tohoto streetscape, there's no garage visible from Tohoto Street on that side of, on my side of Tohoto Street. And at Summit Street, 11 Summit is also unique in that is the only house in that block of Summit Street that actually fronts on Summit Street. None of the other houses actually have the front of the house on Summit. Okay, if you go back to the picture, you might say I could put this garage somewhere else, which is true.
You anticipated my question.
Pardon?
You anticipated my question.
Okay, I could push it all the way back beyond my property line so that it's tucked in there like that. That destroys the backyard. I've got a patio back there. I would completely take that up. It would destroy the view of the house at 95 95 School Street. We look at each other now. We'd lose it if I put the garage way back there. I could also put the garage up here in the front yard. I would not do that. I'll take no garage rather than totally destroy what this place looks like on the streetscape on Tohoto Street. Tohoto Street is one of the nicest streets in town. I've lived there for 45 years. I love it. We have great neighbors. I wouldn't do that to my neighbors, the Barclows, because it would destroy their view. It would also destroy my view. I could put it back further and take up more of my side yard. Then I don't see anything out my kitchen. I don't see the Barclows, and the Barclows are in the shade. I don't want to aesthetically address anything on that south side of the house by putting a garage in there. Like I said, if I don't get approval to put the garage where I want to put it, I can't put one over there. I can't do it to my neighbors. Okay. Let me talk for a couple minutes about the purpose of the zoning ordinance. I'm referring now to 28.1.5. Purposes of the ordinance: promote and protect aesthetics. I'm thinking about that Tohoto streetscape. I don't want to destroy that. That's an aesthetic value that really impacts the value of all the houses on that street. And it particularly impacts the value of my house, where I would not put a garage out there. Quality of life. I think I heard you say earlier to the folks that you cut off their breezeway. Everybody deserves a garage. I'm the only house in that neighborhood that does not have a garage for my house. I had the use of one, but my plans don't include continuing that use of the garage in the other house. Conserve property values. I'm going to enhance that by renovating the house on 11 Summit Street and adding a garage to 12 Tohoto Street. Convenience of access to property is another purpose of the ordinance. I just want to continue to use the 45-year right-of-way that I've been using since 1977 to access the back of my house. If I have to put the garage somewhere else, I lose that access to the back door, which is the door that we've always used. If you put the garage where I am proposing to keep it, or to put it, it has absolutely no impact on either one of the closest abutting neighbors, which would be 95 and 93 School Street. They can't even see that garage from 93 because it's tucked behind their garage. And you can't see it very well in this picture, but on the property at 95 School Street, there's a storage shed which blocks their view of where I'm going to put the garage. I think that shows up better if you look at the plan that I prepared, and that really will show you everything that I want to do. And the red line shows the lot line adjustment, the existing garage at 93 School, the existing shed at 95 School, and my right-of-way from School Street that from Summit Street that I've been using for 45 years. I'm not going to go in unless you want me to. I've covered the hardships in my written presentation, and I'm not going to bore you with going further into the hardships. I think I've demonstrated an appropriate reason to grant the variances that I've requested. I will also note that I think you have letters from from the only three abutters.
I'll be introducing those, yeah.
Okay. There's only three immediate abutters to this property. It's the Barclows on one side, the Newts on the other side, and the Cooks who own the garage that's next to me. And they've all supported the application. I guess you might also be interested in what I intend to do with if I'm granted the variance so that I can provide garage space to 12 Tohoto Street. My plan is to renovate 11 Summit to return it to a two-story house. I'm going to put living space where one of the garages is and use the other one for 11 Summit. So there will only be one garage left at 11 Summit, so that there's no garage left to dedicate to 12 Tohoto. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
What's the elevation? Are they the same level, or do you drop down? Is there a hill in your backyard?
Oh, no,
It's all the
perfectly
same
flat.
level? Okay.
It's perfectly flat. And in fact, Summit Street is appropriately named because it is the summit of the first hill as you go up. So Summit Street might be a foot higher, but it's not by much.
Okay. Ed, you okay?
Yeah, I don't think I have any questions.
Andrew, you okay?
I don't have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kafir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who'd like to speak in favor or in opposition? I think you're the next applicant, so I'm going to. Code enforcement.
No comment.
All right, hearing's closed, and we're open for a motion and/or discussion. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to reopen it only because there are indeed three letters of support from Robert Newt and Heidi Holman of 14 Tohoto Street, Christine Cook of 93 School Street, and it looks like Barclow?
Jim and Kathy Barclow.
Thank you, I just couldn't read the handwriting, at 10 Tohoto Street.
And that's interesting too, because that's the first I've heard the neighbors refer to themselves as 14 Tohoto Street, because it's on the corner of Tohoto and School. And actually on the tax map, it's got 14 Tohoto and 95 School Street. So I'm not sure what the official, I guess it's Tohoto Street now.
I guess it is, yeah. All right.
I appreciate what he wants to do and why he wants to do it, but the fact that there are conforming places on the lot to put the garage make it impossible for me to find hardship in this case. I think the other variance criteria are met, but I don't think there's anything unique about the property that burdens it differently than any other property in the area. It's slightly smaller, but like I said, there's at least two conforming places where it could go. He just doesn't want to put it there. So I would move to deny based on the lack of unnecessary hardship.
But it is unique in the sense that he's the only one on the street that doesn't have a garage.
Mhm.
And I think he's certainly entitled to one.
I'm not questioning his entitlement to a garage, I'm just saying put it someplace that complies with the ordinance.
Yeah, let me play around with hardship here, and if it's the case, I think he made a pretty good case that putting it on why he by right could put it on the other places, it would interfere with the neighbor's enjoyment of their property, and could have some detrimental effect on the property values. So I think it was well considered by the applicant that he was trying to do less harm.
I agree.
And so my concern is that if we, even though the representation was, if I don't get this, I'm not building anything.
Yeah.
That, he might just, despite the zoning board, go build it somewhere, which would be burdensome to the abutters, neighbors. Is that a hardship?
For me, no.
I might take a different approach on looking at that, though, in that the neighbors all seem to approve of this proposed location, which is 2 feet from the property line. I kind of wonder if they wouldn't also approve of a garage located on the other side of the building that would comply.
We don't know.
Right. So it's being that it's an aesthetic consideration, I'm not sure that's really our.
It would alter the character of the neighborhood, though, by putting it in the front yard.
I'm not sure that I agree with that. I'm not saying the front yard, the side yard, I think is what I'm proposing.
And regardless, that's where it's permitted. You buy your house knowing what the zoning ordinance is gonna say and knowing that that's where it could go. The character of the neighborhood and all that stuff only applies when you're seeking a variance from the ordinance.
I think, I think putting in any of those places would be out of character and is not a real feasible option. So I'd be inclined to approve a variance.
Do you want to make a motion?
Well, we have a motion on the table to say deny.
Oh, we do?
I'll withdraw it.
May I make a comment? Would that be out of order?
You would be, yes. Sorry.
I ask the board's permission to make a further comment relating to the hardship. Take 2 minutes.
I'd like to move to reopen the hearing. If there's not a motion on the floor, I'll make a motion to reopen the hearing for 90 seconds.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, I
Proceed.
appreciate that.
You're lucky Chris isn't here.
I could cure all,
And it's late, we're
virtually all
tired.
of these problems except for the 2-foot setback by merging the property, so it would be one property. Then I'm just kicking the ball down the road for having to re-subdivide it when the time comes that I want to sell one of those houses or the other. So I don't want to kick the ball down the road. That's why I'm here tonight. I could merge and do whatever I wanted with that one piece of property, but I don't want to merge because that just causes a problem in the future. As far as trying to put a garage in the front, that would destroy the character of the neighborhood, and it would require taking down 2 mature trees besides. I wasn't kidding when I said I won't build a garage there. In fact, if you want to make that a condition, I'll say that.
We definitely did not think you were kidding.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Now you can close the.
Close that, and I think, Andrew, you're going to make a motion.
I'm going to move to approve.
I'll second so that we can have a discussion and a vote.
I guess I should just say, to explain myself, because I voted nay for the garage on Alice or Amy Way, that totally different neighborhood. That neighborhood was really set out recently with setbacks clearly defined on every lot, whereas this neighborhood is obviously long pre-existing the code, and virtually every house is in violation of the current code, and he doesn't have a garage. So that's my reasoning.
I also think, and we don't have to reopen the hearing, but we can, on Hunter Street, the garages are all on Summit Street, right?
That's correct.
So it would be odd of character in the neighborhood to have the garage onto Honto, and with the curb cut onto Honto. It's a very unique situation, I think, and that's onto Honto where the garages are in Summit.
Yeah, I'm inclined to support it also.
Is that,
I'm looking at this, I'm not sure, is this driveway here the Tohoto as well as this one, I think? Is that what you're referring to?
I'm sorry, on the west side of Tohoto, all the driveways, all the garages are on Summit?
I'm just trying to, I'm not sure what this depicts from an aerial view, I'm just making
Yeah.
sure what you're stating is factual, that's all.
We good for a vote?
Hmm?
Should we vote?
You're saying all the garages are tucked back that way?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And that's what he basically wants to do, now that he's merged the lot.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
It passes 3-2. You're all set, Mr. Graffier.
Oh. Did we do everything?
No, we got one more case.
No, I mean, did we act on all the variances? There were 2 cases.
Yeah.
Andrew?
Do you want to amend your motion to approve all variance requests?
I amend my motion to approve all variance requests.
For case 52 and 50, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I amended to approve as on both of the applications to include.
That goes with a second too, right?
Yes.
Jim? That goes with a second.
Chris is out of state and not watching this on TV, right?
If anyone watches these, either live or on repeat, it's Chris.
Come on up while I read your case.
I gotta tell you, when I go to zoning boards to do training, I'm like, you need to watch the Concord Zoning Board hearings because they are run like a clock.
So we have our last case tonight, 13 Curtis Ave, UT Urban Transition District. Applicant wishes to remove an existing 11-foot by 18-foot garage and replace it with a 24-foot by 30-foot garage and request a variance to Article 2841H, Table of Dimensional Regulations, to permit a structure to be located within 7 feet of the easterly side property line where a 10-foot setback is required, and 17 feet on the northerly rear property line where a 25-foot setback is required. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Great, as you testify, state your name, please, and tell us what you want to do.
Volodymyr Spenchak, 13 Curtis Avenue. I'm new resident. We are new residents in Concord, so.
Welcome.
ju-
We just moved. Our
Just-
daughter live and granddaughter, and you can hear that we are originally from Ukraine, and we don't have anyone here, and we decided to move close to our granddaughter and our daughter. And just,
Yeah, we are
first time we are.
in this situation like this.
You waited a long time, so tell us what you want to do.
So, did you see this picture? And I have a garage, old garage. It's 11 by 18 right on this line. I want to destroy this garage, excuse me, and put a 2-car garage, 24 by 30, on the same line. Because this driveway, if I shift it 10 from this line 10 foot this way, I will block in, my house will block in this exit to the garage. So right now, if I will follow same spot where it is old garage standing, so it will be good from driveway exit to the garage.
And that old garage is like
Old.
old. I'm not even walking to this garage because it just, it just.
Can you
I
point where the
don't know
garage
who
is?
lives in this garage.
Would you like to go up there and just show us where everything
Yeah,
is?
sure.
Do you have a builder that you've hired? Or?
Yes, Exterior Plus.
Okay.
He actually put the copy material, everything.
Oh, okay.
Which is supposed to be. So it's over here. This area, this,
It's the garage.
over
Yeah,
here.
you cannot even see it.
It's over here. You see this?
So you want to take that down,
I will take it down.
and where do you want to put the new one?
Gonna build into the fire
Same
pit.
spot, but just bigger.
About the
And
same spot.
And I put on the same spot, because this line little on the corner, over here, it says 7 foot, over there, it says 8 foot, 8.5, something like that. I just want to put parallel to the building, to the house, so it says, so I can have an exit to the two-car garage, and I need the storage, because I have lots of tools, so.
But it's gonna be bigger, the new garage is gonna be
Yes,
bigger.
bigger. It's
That's a
real-
one-car garage?
Yes, it is 11 by 18.
So-
It will be 24 by 30. It will
Last
be
two
long.
pages of his
Can you show where the additional space is gonna be on the one you're about to build?
So it will be from here to that, to this way. Yeah.
All right.
This is wider this way.
So it's gonna come in this way?
It will be, go back, this is my property, it says go back to my property,
Yeah.
like that.
Andrew.
And this will go this way.
This is the existing one, so he's gonna go like that, and then back here, so he's gonna need a rear setback variance too.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
And what is that rear abutter? Who, is that residential or is that?
No, it's apartment,
Over here, it is parking lot from my neighbor apartment.
Okay.
And this is also it's open area, this is grass, it's this complex, this is seven unit apartment over here.
Okay, thank you.
Where in Concord is,
Curtis Street,
where's
which is just
the east side?
off of Route 3A, right?
Yes, right across the,
North
Ma-
State.
cemetery.
Across the cemetery.
Oh,
So it's,
oh, up there. Yeah, okay.
there it is, right there, you can see it right there. Any questions?
So as I understand it, the setbacks will not change to the side lot, but they're gonna change to the rear property line, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Any questions from anybody else? Andrew? Laura? Jim?
Can you just put the picture up again, just?
Which
Can
one?
you move the garage any closer to the
Yeah.
house? Any more forward on the lot?
Forward, I can probably put, maybe foot and a half closer.
So not a lot, okay.
Are you trying to line it up with the footprint of the house?
Yes, I want to line it from, yes, parallel to the house.
I don't know which one you're looking for, Jim.
The aerial.
Oh, the area, I'm sorry. So Minfoy, so this is his garage here.
Yeah.
Can't move it away from the lot line very easily.
So it's not really gonna change the distance between the back lot line, it's just really gonna get closer to the northern lot line, that's all. That's really what the
Push
additional.
back and wider.
So it's going towards the back lot line.
Yeah, because that hasn't, the back hasn't changed, it's still 8 and 7.
Yeah, so moving it forward
Side.
wouldn't,
Wouldn't save as much.
yeah, okay.
Any other questions?
Is it a one-family house? Or do you have
Yes,
What year was it built?
1900.
it's beautiful.
Wood.
It looks
I
beautiful.
Everything
in the game
redone.
he did it.
inside. Everything redone, new drywall, new system, new heating system, new floor, everything, bathroom, plumbing, everything new.
It's a very nice house. He a little concerned about neighborhood, but as soon I can walk to my my daughter's house, she lives in Concord Street, and I can walk, like it takes me 20 minutes because she lives close to school on Ranford, and I'm happy with that. But he needs storage and.
It has only small basement and the exit from basement from inside from the living room, excuse me, from the living room, and
He's an electrician, he needs tools, he has a lot of tools. A lot. And,
I have a question. Was any consideration given to adding a garage to the back of the house and being able to come up the driveway and then turn into it as another possibility to get it away from the lot lines?
it will, we have beautiful
Backyard.
backyard, and it's not like we will change anything. It will move close to our house garage. It will not, move forward to neighborhood. And, it just, and
10 foot will be too far. For me, it will be probably on the, right on the line with house, and it will be, yeah, I need a little more room to go,
inside garage.
yeah.
We good? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Seeing there's no one in the audience, I won't ask for any comments, other than from code enforcement.
No comments.
Great, hearing's closed, and ready for motion or discussion.
I'm a little concerned about this one, similar to Amy Way. I mean, it's nice to tear down a garage and build it in the exact same place, but I don't know what the back of the building is there, but the area that's directly behind the house towards the back line looks like a perfect place for a garage that might be compliant. It might mean that they would have to turn into the garage, but they would be able to back out of it that way. It seems like it would make a better solution in the long run to locate it that way. So I'd be inclined to move to deny.
I would agree with you. Similar to the previous case, there are conforming places on the property where it could go. If they were knocking it down and building it in the same place or substantially the same place, that would be one thing, but they're doubling the size, more than doubling the size of it.
And this way they'd have a breezeway already built.
They could turn it, I think there's lots of other things they could do. I don't see the hardship.
Yeah. I have a motion on the floor.
You do, and.
I'll second it.
We have a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'm gonna vote against the motion, and if the opportunity arises, I'll move to approve, but with some comment on it.
Yeah, I'm inclined to. I'd be against it too. All in favor of denying the application, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No. I didn't hear. Andrew?
I voted aye, so,
I'm sorry, the motion is denied 3-2.
sorry.
But I think it's with the explanation that there may be a more suitable place on the property for the garage that wouldn't require, you have to come back here.
Who was here?
I don't even remember. Yeah,
Hold on, I got it.
I was here, you were here.
And I was here.
I was not.
All right, I don't know if you were here or not.
Last month I was.
Great. Then we can have a motion to approve the minutes.
Sorry, station, I have to follow rule 10 foot from line, right?
So 8-10?
About
I wasn't clear what you were suggesting.
It was really the back one that concerned
Do you
us.
want to diagram it on the
I
application?
don't know the number off the top of my head. You can certainly come in the office tomorrow, and either myself or the building inspector can go to the
Okay,
dimensions with
do you make the motion?
I move to approve the minutes.
And who can
I'll
second?
second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Minutes have been approved.
He'll have to come back,
Oh,
because he'll still need the variance for
I think
If he
Chris
does
Carly does
that,
this on
yeah. But
purpose.
I
He
mean,
goes
he
on
could turn
vacation.
it, there's lots of other.